Palamon Exiles, this is the Path of Exile 2 hype train, and you are about to see a podcast with Off-Meta Michael and Jorgen. We talk about all things Path of Exile 2, Diablo 2, and many other things. They're both entertaining. People love them live, and I hope you enjoy them here right now. Check out both Off-Meta Michael and Jorgen very quickly, and I hope you enjoy the next stop on the hype train, which will be Captain Lance and then Big Ducks the day after. Enjoy. All right, I'm doing well. How you doing, man?
I'm doing great. Yeah, I'm doing awesome, especially after that reveal. I feel like anybody who had any concerns going forward is probably going to be like, it looks great. You know what I mean?
Man, I was the hype lord for it, and I underestimated what we were going to see.
Yeah.
Seriously.
Yeah, me too. There was actually a point where information overload happened because
Yeah.
I've never played Path of Exile 1 before. And so I was like looking at all of the end game stuff, just like slapping me in the face over and over. And I actually stopped understanding what they were talking about at one point. Yeah, dude, I was getting like information overload on all of the end game stuff because I've never played Path of Exile 1. And it was like currency after currency. And I was like, what is happening? And then the one thing that stood out though was the amulet crafting where you can get the notable. And I just went, you know, I was like, oh, dude, that's out. And so what I do on my channel is off meta builds on D2. And that stood out immediately. It was like, hey, if you want this passive way over here, just craft an amulet. And I was like, this is perfect.
Oh
You
my
know?
goodness. So, Michael, can I call you Michael?
Yeah.
Awesome. Michael, my sweet summer child. This is going to be a fascinating discussion because,
Yeah.
as you just said, you've never played Path of Exile 1 before. So, you
No.
were coming from Diablo 2. Any other ARPGs that you've played?
Okay. So, like, I mean, I played Diablo 1 when I was a little kid. And then I actually did try Diablo 3 when it first came out. And so it's totally different now. So I have no idea what D3 is even like. I played it for like a couple weeks at launch and then just played D2 again. I didn't bother buying D4 because I just it looked like Diablo 3 to me. And then I've never played a Last Epoch or Grim Dawn. I've literally just been playing D2 like on and off for 20 years, dude. That's it. And then Diablo 2 Resurrected came out. I wasn't even gonna buy it. I was just like, it's Diablo 2. I've played it, you know? And then I was like, well, I'll give it a shot. And then like 3 years later, here I am. And I have I think I made like 90 builds in D2 on my channel or something.
That's
Yeah.
insane, man.
And they're all online.
Yeah.
I made them all online. There's no hero editor on any one of the builds or anything. So I got like totally kind of sucked back into it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
that's godly, dude. I have only played Diablo 2 when I was younger. So I actually picked it up with my dad when I was 4 or 5 years old.
Yeah.
And I got to the end of the game with him in co op. And then when I was 11, I started playing it again for a little bit before I got sucked into MMOs. And then I got
Mm,
sucked back into ARPGs when I tried D3 in 2019, hated it, and found
yeah.
Path of Exile. So I'm so curious. You've loved D2 for so long. You got sucked back
Yeah.
in with D2R.
Yeah.
Was Path of Exile ever on your radar, or it's just Path of Exile 2 that has now somehow brought you to this new side of the ARPG genre?
Yeah, so like once I started my channel, so I uploaded my first build video like a year ago now, I think. And um once I started like making more videos and streaming a little bit, some people kept saying like, "Have you ever tried Path of Exile?" And I'm like, "No, I don't really know anything about it." Like I think I might have actually downloaded it once years ago. And
Right.
then I don't remember anything about it. Like I don't think I got very far at all. So I don't have any experience with it. And so I think like really for me, I'm kind of a creative type. Like I'm very visual and also like musical. Like I don't know if you've noticed on my channel, I have like all my own music like in the background that I wrote and recorded, and like I write these like prog rock tunes for the build videos I've been doing. I started doing that like 4 months ago.
Really?
So
That's
yeah,
a
so like if you
recent
go
thing?
the music, yeah. So
Yeah.
like 4 months ago, I like my builds starting 4 months ago started having their own songs for every build. And so
That's
like
awesome.
that's another thing is like Diablo 2 has some of the most god tier like video game music ever, you know, so that really drew me in with that. And so the visuals though, um, Diablo 2 Resurrected did a really good job of like kind of enhancing what I remember D2 looking like. And that's partly what sucked me back in is like just the entire package, the aesthetic, the atmosphere, the music, and then the items. And so when I looked at Path of Exile 1, you know, and dude, I'm telling you, my Path of Exile 1 videos I've like talked about a little bit on my channel. People don't like it. You know, like they really don't like it. There's like 10% of my video just gets disliked, you know what I mean? Like my
Instantly.
ratios went from like 95 average to like 90 on the PoE videos because I basically was just trashing PoE 1 graphics half the time. And like I don't care, whatever. I just thought like I just was like the UI doesn't look good and I don't know, I don't like the way the items look and I don't like how like janky this skill looks and you know and everyone and then people and I was just like reacting to stuff like not even really realizing that it would hurt people's feelings or something. And so, you know, and so for me, the visual aspect is huge. Like Path of Exile 2 immediately was like, dude, this is like this is like a singularity of ARPG-ness. You know, this is D2 again 20 years later. You know, like it's happened. They finally did it. That's what it felt like when I saw it. And the video that did it for me was Jonathan doing the demonstration of the monk in Act 3 with the sorceress with the dual specialization.
Yep.
Dude, that video, I remember watching that going, "Holy crap, dude." Like I I think like somebody actually finally made like an incredible ARPG again. And that was even before WASD was in the game. But in speaking of that, I have a huge announcement. All right. Huge
Oh.
announcement. Okay. Get this. On December 3rd, Diablo 2 Resurrected will have a patch, okay? And
Okay.
it says move directions are now bindable.
Ooh.
WASD is going to be in Diablo 2 Resurrected on December 3rd.
Really? So they're doing work
Yeah.
on that game still? I thought they dropped it entirely.
No, but that's like it. The other one was a minor bug. That's the only patch notes coming for the next ladder, which is hilarious because the next ladder starts on December 6th.
What's going on with that? Are they trying to kill Diablo 2 Resurrected for good with that? Come on.
Dude, it's not going to be like Path of Exile 2 where you actually like backpedal and sidestep. You know, it's not gonna be like
Right.
that. But they already have controller support for it and everything. So I don't think it's
Mm-hmm.
that hard to bind directions, you know? But
Right.
it's just funny to me. So here's my theory about that. My
Yeah.
theory is that the one dev whose job is to just make sure the lights are on for the servers for D2, he's just sitting there like watching PoE2 footage and he's like, dude, this game looks awesome. You know? he's like, hell yeah, dude. Like WASD, you know? And so he's like, man, I want that in D2, you know? And so he's like, I'm gonna practice by putting it
Yeah.
in D2. So that's my theory is that the one dev who's just keeping the lights on for the servers implemented some you know primitive WASD movement into D2 so he could just kind of practice. And then like at work on December 6th, you know, like Turd Ferguson's gonna be there. Like nobody better be playing PoE2
Thank
today.
you for
But
bringing that up, Michael.
yeah,
So,
yeah,
as a D2 player, D2, D1,
yeah.
watching Path of Exile 2, not just trailers, but watching the devs actually play through the game. It's not all just hype and cinematic, blah, blah, blah. Would you classify Path of Exile 2 as a Diablo-like in the Diablo 2, Diablo 1 sense? Or is
I
it
mean,
not a Diablo-like?
it's so obviously related. I mean, I don't think like the thing that's annoying about what he said is that he's trying to like disassociate it or something in a way that makes it like that he can like kind of hand wave it away, you know?
To
That's what's
leave
annoying about
Diablo 4 as the top dog in the
like, hey, we
Diablo-like.
have the name, so we're the Diablo. And then these are all like, you know, these are like ARPGs or Souls likes and Diablo like and but we're Diablo, we own it. And it's like, dude, you know, these guys have done something incredible with this game. Like you can just see it. And here's the thing too, man. I can like so I can't I played the closed beta, but I'm not allowed to talk about it.
Oh, you did.
Yeah,
Okay,
I'm
yep.
I
No,
can't
no
talk about it.
leaks. You got picked though? What the?
First round, yeah.
Oh,
And so here, so I can't talk about it, but what I can say is this: after it was over, I immediately requested a week off from work for when early access was. Immediately.
did you get to
Okay.
rescind it for December 6th?
I got it moved when they
Oh,
delayed the game. Yeah.
oh,
So I'm like, do you have any idea how annoying it is to have like a YouTube channel and you can't talk about the hottest freaking ARPG right now that you've played? I can't talk
oh.
about it. Not allowed to. So all the videos I did this whole time about PoE, I had to make sure everything was public. If I said anything, I was like,
Wow.
so like anything that was in the closed beta, I was like, was that only in the beta, or is there a version of that publicly? And so like I went and looked through everything and was making sure I found everything in the public playthroughs first before I ever talked about anything.
Mad
Um,
respect, dude. Holy hell.
yeah, so I've been like not able to talk about it, and I'm I can tell you though, I immediately requested off work because I was like,
Hmm.
yes, I will take work off for a week when it's out. You know,
I would like to play this game upon release. There's no
I
reason
would.
why in particular. I just want to
Right,
play it, okay? You know?
right. I don't want to break NDA here. So yeah,
No,
man. And
don't do that. I will not force you. Nope,
no,
don't even.
and I will say that my Diablo 2 builds, you know, they're all like wacky off meta builds that I've been trying to make. Some of them people have said things like like I've never seen a build like that before. You know, and this game's been out for 20 years, you know. So that's quite the feat, I think. And even though it's like the builds are not, you know, destroying like the meta builds, it's still like the creative aspect of it that I love so much. And that's what PoE 2 is allowing. I can see it right away. It's like our game is so creative that if you're creative with it, you get to enjoy all of that too. You know, they allow you to be creative with what they've built. I love that. Diablo 2 has that actually. It really does. And Diablo 2 even wants you to do off meta stuff. It's just that they never really fully got around to balancing it well enough. Like
Now,
some of the most, yeah,
would you
go
say
ahead.
that's the biggest part of Diablo 2's replayability is the ability that you can just make so many different builds and they feel distinct and you get that feeling of euphoria when you build something, it all comes together and you're like, no one's ever done that before.
Yeah, that is part of it, is like having the concept and then actually putting it together. And I specifically did that online so that I couldn't um like just give myself everything in hero editor and then just be like is it as good as this? I actually like would just play it through, you know. And that process was always fun to me. Like the replayability in D2 is great actually because there's no smart loot, you know.
Right.
So and Jonathan has specifically said he hates that. He doesn't like smart loot. He doesn't want that in Path of Exile. And that was another thing that drew me into Path of Exile too, was just listening to Jonathan talk about the game and his philosophy. uh, I don't think there's anything he said that I disagreed with so far. You know, that's
Uh,
just coming from a purely Diablo 2 background,
I
you know?
see. I see. A
Yeah.
lot of people really appreciate that Jonathan has a clear vision and
Yes.
he's willing to enact it across his entire company, his entire game. But when someone challenges it, he either dies defending his idea or he ends up changing it to suit
Yes.
what the players want, what the devs think is necessary. We can see that with something like flasks. And I know this is a really hot button issue
100%.
right now. There's just been a big change with flasks where it's down from 5 to 2, 1 mana, 1 life, no other flasks, new trinket system. Lots of people are very heated about that. But this is something that Jonathan was so insistent on having. He wanted the 5 flask system with all
Yeah.
these different utility and he's changed on it,
Right.
right?
Like it's like he's reasonable. He's able to be
Yeah.
shown a better way and then he can adopt it. But like one thing I saw, I think it was on the Woody Joe or Woody-O. I don't know how you pronounce his
Woody
channel, but
Joe.
Woody Joe. Okay. I've said it wrong every time before that. But anyway, he there was a specific point in that interview from like 7 months ago, and he was asking him about, I think he was asking a question for a viewer, and the viewer was asking about like being able to automatically dump all of your currency like from your like inventory into like your stash and like even items and everything. And Jonathan was like, it's a game and not an Excel spreadsheet. And he
True.
was like, I think it's okay to have to, like, move some things from time to time, you
Hmm.
know? And I was like,
It's
"Dude, I love
yeah,
this man."
yeah.
Like,
It's the
he
way.
want yeah, like, exactly. You don't wanna make everything so automated to the point where it's like, "Yeah, this is my job now, I guess." Like, all I do is, like, just, like, add currency into my stash all the time. And so like I really like that about him is that he's like, it's still a game. I still want it to be a game. I want you to feel the impact of like placing the items and all that. And that's a very Diablo 2 thing, man.
Hmm.
Because if you look at Diablo 3 and Diablo 4, the UI, like all the items are like the same size, you know?
Yep.
The graphics are like and so like it really takes away from that. I like the fact that like you have like these big like 8 square pieces of gear, and it takes up too much space and everything. And I really love that. Um,
I
and
think
I think Jonathan said
friction
the
in a
same thing.
game is good at times. I know people are going to hate when I say that because it's the whole meme in the Path of Exile community that one of the old game directors used to say all the time, "Oh, he wants you to feel the weight of each
Yeah,
item that you pick up off the floor or something like that."
right.
And the friction that Path of Exile has in some of these areas that some people see as antiquated ends up serving the game very well at the end of the day. It differentiates it from its competition, I think, in a good way, and it really keeps people coming back. I know people are gonna go against me, but friction in life is good, everyone. Trust me,
Yeah,
and it's good in games too.
yeah, and one of the things that what I call that in Diablo 2 is I say the downtime is as good as the uptime. And so
Ah,
like you're sitting in town just like fiddling with some of your items and you're organizing your stash and you're like, "Oh, look at that unique I found." And okay, and then you're like putting in the back of your mind like, "Oh, maybe I'll like a druid next because I found that item." And then you're like looking at the gear on your character and you're just listening to the music in town and like you can to me, I love that about an ARPG. I mean, so like I've only played D2 really, right? So, but I've watched other people play other ones though a bit, you know? And I don't know. I kind of like I'm not a speed runner. I'm like a slow runner, with D2. I really am. I like to take my time with it. And that's how I'm going to play Path of Exile 2 is like I'm just going to I'm going to take my time. I'm not going to rush through the whole campaign. And from D2 there's really not like end game maps and all that stuff. So like I'm just excited for the campaign. Like a lot of people, PoE1 people, they're like, "What about the end game? End game? Give me the end game." And I'm just like, dude, I just want to play the campaign. Even those 3 acts is like enough to me right now. And so, in all the end game, I'll get on board with that eventually for sure. But like for like all the build crafting and stuff. But man, like I am so looking forward to just hearing the dialogue from the bosses, seeing what the areas are like. Just like looking at the rares that drop once in a while and just comparing it. Like I really want to take my time with that.
see, and Michael, this is why I really wanted to chat with you because you bring such a fresh perspective to the Path of Exile community. And most of my audience are Path of Exile players. Some of them came from D4, they're excited for PoE 2, but most of them are Path of Exile players. And what you just described is lovely and kind of what I do at a much faster rate in Path of Exile.
Mm,
Chilling in town, looking at the items that you get, listening to that music, taking it in, not going to your hideout, blasting all of your items to the stash, and then going into the next map, which is how many Path of Exile players currently measure their playtime. They say, all right, time in hideout is bad. The hideout is lava. When you're not in your hideout, you're not killing monsters, you're not getting loot, you're not getting divine orbs, and you are getting behind in the game. That is
yeah.
not my perspective at all. But I've said that many times to people. I love hearing it from an outsider coming in and getting so ready to experience all these crazy things about PoE2, like you just said. You just listed off one after the other. And like you said, not even the end game, right? And the end game, man, it's so different compared to other games. I know you said you've only played D2, right? A little bit of
Yeah.
D3, D1.
Yep.
Diablo 4, it has an end game. But in Path of Exile and Path of Exile 2, the end game is its own story. It's not
Mhm.
just, okay, you're going to go to dungeons, you're going to kill monsters. That's what you're going to do. No, there's an actual narrative that you dive into. And there are characters that are explaining what's going on. You're making an impact on the world. It's not just endless grinding like in other games. Path of Exile 1 has that as well, and I really appreciate about the game. Not just
Yeah.
hopping into a portal, blasting through an area, next portal. It's not that. At least not the first time through. And it sounds like you're really going to appreciate experiencing that narrative for the first time as a fresh player, like all of us are, right?
Yeah, because you only get that once really too, you know? And like if I think back to when I first played Diablo 2 when I was a kid, I mean, that was a long time ago. And that I remember sitting like in my parents' like computer room, you know, and loading up this game that's named after Satan, you know, which is like you're like, "Oh no, like this is a bad game. What if my mom finds out?" You know?
Yeah.
And loading this game up and just you it opens in town and you hear this guitar and everything and you're just like, like this is a game, but I feel like I'm in a storybook or something now, like as a kid, you know? And I loved that experience, and as you get older and you like the game has been solved now and everyone, you know, you can go online and look up every little detail about every item and how to min max everything. Like it does become almost like an Excel spreadsheet type experience for some people. And I've done that a little bit, you know, like be like, oh, what's the best, right? But the very like just stumbling through the game and not understanding how the stuff works and all that, like that is actually going to be one of the most fun parts that you're not going to be able to get again. And so I'm not going to just blast all the way through the early access just to the end game and just start grinding, you know? Like I
Totally
might
agree.
roll another character before I even do that, you know? I don't
Oh
know.
yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
you might find an awesome unique that goes with a different character. We just saw a unique posted today that gives you the Giant's Blood Keystone at level 11, which allows you to dual wield two-handed weapons, right? Or
That's
use a
awesome.
shield and then a two-handed weapon. You might get that off one of the act bosses in Act 1 and be like, "Oh, maybe I want to
Right.
reroll a warrior, right?" And
Yeah.
just go all in on that instead of playing a monk. I presume, Michael, are you starting with a monk? I've seen you study a lot of monk gameplay and do a lot of period crafting.
100%. So like I made in D2, I made a monk druid and a monk necromancer, which is like not obvious to make in D2 because there's no monk class and those characters in human form have no attacks really. So you have to find ways to boost just their regular attack and use their other skills. And so thematically, I made the build and it was pretty cool. But so when I saw the monk in PoE2, I was like, oh man, I've been wanting to like make a character like that in D2 for so long, you know? And so I noticed in the new footage too that they added some skills, man. So, and they even modified some of the skills that are currently there. So like they added Storm Wave, which is the one where he's like kind of like sweeping the ground and like lightning is shooting out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's totally new. The vaulting impact one where he flips forward, that was obvious right away. I was like, oh, that's awesome because at one point I was wondering about taking like a bow on swap to have the electrocuting arrow vault so that you could
Yeah.
like get out of like if you get cornered, you know,
Right.
it would be good to switch to that to vault over. But then they added in his own vaulting mechanic, which I thought was great. And that's just good for closing in on enemies. And then they added, um, what else did they add? They added something else. It was, oh yeah, Hand of Triula, but we've seen that. And then
Right.
they also added Mantra of Destruction, which I don't really know exactly what that does. I don't think they explained it, you know. But
No.
no, they didn't explain what that does. But anyway, but the skill tree looks meaty for him right now. It looks good, you know. And I love the movement of the monk. I think it's so cool. The ascendancies both look great. Um, like I think I like the invoker one better actually
Okay.
right now, just based on first, you know, appearance. It's like I like the avatar, the last airbender style like thing they're going for with that. I think that's great. I thought that they would do something like that anyway. It seemed kind of obvious. Um, so yeah, definitely rolling monk, and I'm gonna try like variants of it, you know. So I do wanted to try to like follow the path that they kind of lead out for you. So, but it's gonna be hard for me to do that because I like to do the off class, off meta things. So like one of my videos, I just theorized about like a fire monk because all of his skills are wind, ice, and lightning themed. So there's no fire in the build. And so I was like, well, it's kind of obvious then that like an off meta monk would be fire based, you know?
Oh yeah.
And there's plenty of things to be able to do that, obviously. Like you can put fiery death on Killing Palm, which explodes enemies on death, you know, and it like can ignite things and stuff. So I was like, okay, that's cool. So you're killing every single culling strike could have a chance to explode enemies then, you know?
Oh
I was like,
yeah.
that's awesome. And then you could just take your first 30 spirit and put it on Herald of Ash so that your
Hmm.
overkill damage does all this extra burn damage to enemies, which Falling Thunder has like crap loads of overkill damage. You know, especially when you're like leveling through the campaign, it looks like.
It's
Yeah.
insane. And I heard about a notable, and you'll love this because of the amulet thing you mentioned at the top of the pod, dude. There's a notable on the tree. I think it's on the opposite side of where you start of as the monk that causes your expended power charges to have, I think it was 50 to 80% increased effect. And
Mm,
the way you activate Falling Thunder is spending a power charge.
yeah.
So if you take that notable either with your amulet using that little crafting system or just on the passive tree, you can massively increase the AoE of Falling Thunder
Yeah,
more
that's
so than
nuts.
before and increase the I mean, the combinations, dude,
It's
are gonna
nuts.
be limitless.
Yeah, and I love that there's so many ways to get the power charges too. Like, yeah, there's Killing Palm, but there's also Profane Ritual where you can just get charges from corpses.
Hmm.
And if you put Corpse Conservation and Spell Echo supports on that, you could get a chance to get 2 power charges in one cast from one corpse, you know? And then
Michael, dude,
there's a notable
everybody in the
too.
chat is like, this guy's a PoE veteran. What do you mean he's never played Path of Exile?
Nah, I've never played it. So like, and then you could, I can't see the chat actually. I didn't bring it up, but
Oh, it's fine.
yeah, that's fine. But so and then dude, there's even a passive. It's called Lust for Power, and it says that every time you get a power charge, you have a chance to get maximum power charges plus 1 power charge. And it's not even that far in the tree unless they changed it because it was a while ago. I found
Yeah,
it like in a playthrough, you know? And
yeah.
so I was like, dude, that just seems like a no-brainer. Like, so you could just there's so many ways to get the power charges. Like, I feel like it would be kind of easy even with Monk to just Falling Thunder the world, you know? Like
Right,
in
over and over.
yeah,
Mhm.
so we'll see. We'll see how it goes. But and the thing that I'm so excited about for Monk too is just, and I pointed this out in one of my videos, his combo moves can be interrupted and then finished. So
Right.
like Tempest Flurry, he has this staff where he like hits twice and twirls it around. And the third move is that flip forward with the lightning bolt, and it does AoE.
Yeah.
If you do like Frozen Locust and flip backwards first, and then do the third hit of Tempest Flurry, it finishes the move. So you can interrupt the combos and do their finishers after other moves. You can even do them after running. So you can do Tempest Flurry, run a little bit, finisher of Tempest Flurry. And then there's a support that's called extended combo so that it does the finisher again. And in the new monk footage that we saw from the big reveal, there's a section where a pretty fast attack speed monk uses Ice Strike, which hits 3 times, and the third time has that bigger, slower slash that does more ice damage and
Yep.
freeze. He does it 3 times in a row.
Yeah.
So you can extend the combo at least like 2 more times that we've seen so far.
I wonder if it's mixed in with the ascendancy a bit. I know exactly what you're talking about. I think
Yeah,
it's during the Evoker showcase. He's just going berserk with that one move, killing
that
everything in his path. Oh,
there's another one where it's like they do a close up of the monk and he's got that black brimmed hat. That
okay.
one, that little section, and that's where he uses Ice Strike, and it's like boom, 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 and it's like just he does the finisher of that like 3 times in a row, I think. And I was
Yeah.
like, okay, that's cool. And that's what I'm so looking forward to with the monk is the mobility and the fluidity of all of those combos. It's like the other games that I like a lot too that I never show on my channel. Like I played Ninja Gaiden and Devil May Cry and like all those kinds of games. You know, like I played them on the hardest difficulties all the time. So I really like action games a lot too. You know, so the monk feels like it fulfills that niche too, you know?
So I know you said you're not blasting, but it sounds like you should be downing the pinnacles pretty damn fast, dude.
I
I mean, you're
guess. I don't know.
you're an action gamer. Heck yeah.
No, I
I
mean,
can see it happening.
I'm saying I'm gonna take my time in the campaign. Like I'm not gonna focus on blast, but like if it's happening, it's happening, you know?
How many times are
Um,
you going to die on these bosses? I expect to die at least maybe not the first boss, right? The bloated Miller. All right, I'm gonna down him time one. The
Yeah.
Devourer onward, man, I expect to die multiple times, at least
I think I
4 or
will
5 times.
too. I think I will too because it's gonna take some getting used to WASD for me as well. It's hard. It's like a hard thing. I don't really play that a lot in many games. I did try. I just remembered. I did try V Rising for a little bit.
Mm,
Because it has WASD, and
mhm.
it was a little difficult for me to kind of get used to it. But I'm just gonna. My plan is to go WASD from the start, just so that it's like my baseline in the game. You know?
Yeah. When I played the monk in LA, I used controller. Man, if you're not good at fighting games or anything like that, or you're not good at combos, oh, it was a struggle for me to learn everything. But
Yeah.
once I got in the groove and started actually using the proper abilities and like the wind projectile attacks and comboing that with my other, oh, it felt
Yeah.
so good. And you're so mobile too. Because with killing Palm and the other finisher or opener, whatever, you could just hop from monster to monster to monster. And if you needed to
Yeah.
retreat, especially if you were playing co op, which I was, you can just hop around the battlefield at will. It felt so good, but it's
Yeah.
very active. And that's
Yeah.
something that some people are frightened about. Now, from your perspective, Michael, what do you think about the action gameplay of PoE 2? Because in PoE 1, you get to a point where you are pressing one button and everything dies.
Mm.
Nothing else. No thought is needed. Sometimes some characters and some good players can even do that with endgame bosses. In Path of Exile 2, I think that is going to be much harder to do. Now, what are your thoughts on that? Would you want to eventually be able to get to that level easily? Or do you think that should be a bit of a challenge, if even possible, in the
No,
game?
like that's gotta be like you've got the most incredible drops with the most incredible unique that's got the most lucky corruption on it, you know? Like that I think so. That's how I would balance it. Like because then what's gonna happen is everyone's just gonna want to make that build, you know? And they've talked about like Jonathan has talked about this. He said like a 0 button build or a 1 button build should not be beating a combo build. He was like, I don't think that's okay. You know, he said that to Zizaran like months ago. And
Yeah, people got upset about that one.
sure, I know, but like I think people will figure this stuff out. I think it's
Oh
gonna
yeah.
happen. I just don't I just think that that shouldn't be the obvious route for a game that's designed to use multiple skills. You know, like that's not their intention. I did that video called Justification for a Slower Game, you know?
Mm-hmm.
More dislikes than any other video I've ever done, by the way.
Oh,
And,
really?
and but it had a 90% ratio still.
That's
But
really good. Way
okay,
better than
okay.
my worst video.
So
Congratulations, dude.
so it had the most dislikes, you know, but still a 90% ratio. But just number wise, it had a lot. And I get why, because people are upset if you tell them the game's gonna be slower, you know. But I gave like evidence after evidence in that video of the devs, like, okay, Rockham, for example. Rockham is in there saying you can't have slow skills in PoE 1 because of the way the skills are in PoE 1.
Mhm.
And so my point in that was, okay, so they want to have slow skills in PoE too. Like obviously. And do they just want it for just leveling through the campaign? Like, no. And then we saw in the reveal trailer, like when they did show like end game mapping and stuff, there was a lot of warrior, and he was slamming and lots of AoE and lots of interactions, but he wasn't zooming, you know? The fastest thing we saw was when the monk did flicker strike with 7 power charges on him.
Oh, that was insane, man.
And it didn't blow up the entire screen. And
Mhm.
and it just went like that, like right through a group of monsters, you know? And it looked awesome. And the thing about Flicker Strike is it consumes the power charges. You can't gain power charges when you use it. So it's self-limiting, you know? And so like I was like, yeah, that's about as fast as I saw anything in in the reveal. I did see lots of interactions. Like there was a point where the ranger, I think there was like a million freaking lightning rods in the ground, and it just became like the whole screen just like lit up with like electricity, you know?
Yeah.
And I was like, and it looked awesome though, and
Mhm.
everything was readable. Everything was readable. I have never played PoE 1, and I could tell you what was happening on screen still. And that to me is the most important thing, is that you want to be able to see what's happening so that you can enjoy what your build is doing. I get that, like, if you're building a character to one shot things and blow up the entire screen, it takes time to get there, and you can like be like, look at the freaking sweet build I made. I get that. But that shouldn't be the norm. You know, like not for this game that they spent a year just implementing WASD.
Right?
You can't even use WASD in a game that goes so fast that there's no reason to actually strafe to the left or right anymore. You know what I'm
Exactly.
saying?
That's an excellent point, dude.
So like
There's
why
no
would you
way
delay
that,
the
yeah,
game a year?
yeah,
Why would you delay the game an entire year if the purpose is to just get to the zoom boom? You know, I just don't see that happening. And I think Jonathan has said, like, he said in his, like, I put this in my videos. He was like, I was always unhappy about outsiders watching PoE 1 footage and just looking at it, and it's totally incomprehensible to some people. He's like, I'm not really happy with that anymore. Like, and it's true, man. From an outside,
yeah.
that's one of the reasons I never wanted to play it.
Michael,
Like,
I don't know. Perhaps you've seen it, perhaps not, but I think it's one of the most popular Path of Exile clips of all time. Asmongold playing a build called Ward Loop,
is that all the
wherein
white
you
stuff
just
shooting?
spam, yep, you just spam out
Yeah,
spells. You don't even do anything. You're just
yeah.
running around, spells blast out from you. Ingenious. Amazing that Path of Exile allows a build like that to exist. It took a lot of effort and insight to get to that point. But what a terrible visual representation of your game. I mean, it
For,
hurts your eyes. It
yeah.
just looks like trash. I mean, I know some people enjoy it. It's very easy to play. But oh my gosh. When the game gets to a point like that, do I upset the chat? It's time to make a new game and
Well,
let
yeah,
that game sit and be what it's become
yeah.
and build a completely new game. And that I'm so glad that they split out the game so Path of Exile 1 can have that possible. And Path of Exile 2 can
Yeah.
just flourish, right?
Yeah, and there is a build in Diablo 2 that so in Diablo 2 Resurrected, it got a bunch of quality of life updates and patches and balance patches over its 3-year lifespan. Okay. And over the last year, they like did basically nothing. But one of the last things they did is they created this item for the assassin that literally allows you to infinitely spam every single martial arts skill on the martial arts tree at the same time.
Ooh.
Okay, like I don't know if you remember that from when you were a kid. But anyway, just imagine like just imagine like you're the monk in PoE 2, and you hit a button, and every single one of his skills goes off at the same time. You know,
Ooh.
and I remember I was like, what are they doing? Like, what are they doing? You know, and it's the dumbest thing ever. It deletes everything. It does every type of elemental damage, and in Diablo 2, immunities are a thing.
Yep.
Oh, by the way, I found fire immunes in PoE 2.
No, you didn't. Don't say
Yes, I
that,
did.
Michael.
Yes, I did. It's in
What footage?
Expedition.
Recent?
It's in Expedition. So
Oh,
during
yes,
the
that does exist. Yep.
yeah, in Expedition, there's a thing that says Unearthed Remnant, and it says monsters are immune to fire damage, 40% increased quantity of items found. So
You get to choose
yeah,
if you fight those or not. That's the only reason it's in there.
right.
If
You
they
get
were
to
to ever
choose.
include it as a random modifier, oh, I mean, the game would be over, Michael.
Yeah, no, people don't want that. I know. The D2 player in me is like, dude, I'm gonna have to figure out my build now again. You know, like, oh
Yeah.
crap, fire immunes are bad. More are my D2 players in the chat at all? Dude, there's fire immunes. All right, we got Diablo 3 here. You know, sweet, finally got Diablo 3, everybody. You know,
Oh my
so
gosh.
yeah, there's so D2 is notorious for having way too many fire immunes once you get to hell difficulty, and your
Yeah.
fire build just is dead in the water. They did eventually add Sunder charms though that allow you to break their immunity,
Okay.
but they still have 95% of resistance. So you have to like get way more gear to make it work. And it was a good change, but that one spammy change they made, which was a rune word. So like you had to put runes in a claw. You get 2 of them, and it makes you like have infinite skills, and you can spam them all. And I was like, this is dumb. You know, I don't like this. And I never played that build. Never once tried to roll it. Never cared to because it just wasn't fun. And people were crashing the game with it. It like the frames would drop and stuff. And
Now, is that a
one
chase thing in Diablo 2? I'm curious because I know
no
about
man,
Rune
it's
where it
not even
wasn't.
expensive. Like it wasn't even expensive. Like the runes for it. So if there's D2 players in the chat, you'll know that the highest rune in it was a Gull rune, which is not that hard to get actually in the game if you play it like, you know, if you like, even if you do a ladder reset and you played it like every day for a couple hours, you could find some currency and trade for one. You know, it wouldn't be that hard.
Hmm.
So yeah, so that's the thing is like they did something stupid at the end, and then the team that was working on that game got pulled to D4 when when D4 was like in trouble when it was
Yes.
first, the entire team of Vicarious Visions that was working on Diablo 2 Resurrected, and they did great work except for a couple things. They all got pulled away, and then there were no more updates and no more balance changes and everything. And I was always like, hey, maybe they'll hear me, like in my small channel. I'm making all these off meta builds, and like I was like, I have suggestions, guys, and
Yeah.
like no, nothing ever happened. But yeah, man. So there's fire immunes in Expedition if you want to engage them, you know. But yeah, I'm super excited about PoE 2, man. I'm like the build crafting already is going bonkers in my brain after seeing the ascendancies.
Dude, your channel's gonna pop because people love off-meta wild stuff. If you have not already, look up a channel called OMG. It's Usis
Uh-huh.
on YouTube. It's Path of
Yeah.
Exile 1, but the guy goes into build manipulation like no one else. He has caused grinding your game single-handedly to patch stuff out of the game instantly because it was
All right.
breaking the servers. And he
Oh,
showcases
geez.
it on YouTube, the process, the math, all that. Very snappy editing,
Nice.
excellent voice. I think you'd be a huge fan.
Cool.
So
Yeah, I'll check that out.
give it a
I'll definitely
check.
check that
Yeah.
out.
Yeah, it's very good.
Yeah.
I'm sure he'll do the same in Path of Exile 2. He actually did in Path of Exile 2 during the first March LA event. He found a crossbow and they were imbalanced, and he used it to like three-shot all the bosses.
Oh,
And
you know
he,
what? I think I saw that.
oh, you did?
Did did he also realize that you can automatically reload it by dodge rolling or something?
Yes, and he wasn't able to post the boss killing footage because GGG was
Oh,
like, "We
yeah.
don't want you to represent the game like this. So sorry, dude. We should have fixed
Yeah.
it, but you can't." I think he talked about it though.
Yeah, he
Excellent
broke the
videos.
game.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, he broke the game. He
Yeah.
played it for 4 hours and he had already broken it. So that is your task, man. You find the off meta build that breaks the game and get GGG to fix it. That's a badge of honor.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll see. Like I might find something if cuz it on accident maybe.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm really more about just like going with like a theme maybe. Like
Yeah.
one of the builds I made on my channel is a Strider Paladin, and it's based off of Aragorn from Lord of the Rings. So like he's got a
Ooh.
two-handed sword, and on swap he's got a bow, and it's on a Paladin in D2, which if you're not using a shield on a Paladin, your Paladin kind of sucks. And
Mm.
so I made that work, and people really liked that video a lot actually. And I even recorded music for that where I listened to the Strider theme from Lord of the Rings and then transposed a lot of the movements in it on guitar and then recorded it and put it in the background during the combat montage. But
Dude,
yeah, that's
that's
not my channel. It's
awesome.
called Strider Paladin. But that's like a build that like I want to make in PoE 2, is
Yeah.
like, and we haven't seen any two-handed sword combat yet. I'm so
No
excited for
axe.
that.
No axe, no
Yeah.
two-handed sword, no dagger. There's claws like from D2. I know.
I
That's
know.
what I played. Assassin. It's assassin in D2, right?
Yeah, it is. It's
Yeah,
called
that's what I
Assassin. Yeah.
played. Yep, I played druid and assassin. Love that archetype. Haven't seen anything. The druid, man. I watched your reaction to the druid. I think it was the wolf druid though, not the bear. What are your thoughts on the bear form, man? Like, have you seen that
Yeah.
gameplay?
Yes. So when it's weird because when I first saw it, I was like, it was really early when I was first kind of getting into watching PoE 2. So I had to watch it again months later because I didn't understand what they were talking about.
Totally.
So my first reaction to it was like, oh, it's cool. Like you turn into a bear. And then when I watched it again after having like picked up a few of the like vocabulary for PoE, then I was like, oh, this is awesome because you get a third weapon slot in shapeshift form. You can put your passives for that too and everything. And I was like, this is going to be bonker. And then like the exerted attacks with the slams. And then I'm just sitting there thinking like, what if you just were like a warrior and then you put the fissures in the ground with your hammer and then you turn into a bear and then just run across all of them, right?
If you're a Titan, man, if you're a Titan Ascendancy
Yeah.
warrior where you do 40% more damage if an enemy is heavy stunned, there's nodes on the trees that increase that by another 30%. I mean, warrior or Titan bear form, it's happening. It's
Yeah.
happening.
Absolutely, absolutely. It goes together so well. And so I really thought that was actually really smart, really cool. The one thing that I'm hesitant about right now is whatever the wolf is going to be, only because 5 years ago they showed off a wolf form that was before they were ever even doing like PoE 2 as a second game, right?
Tossed out. All of that is
Yeah,
tossed
it's
out.
gotta be
Yeah,
gone, and
it's
did you see I've actually found that exact model as an enemy in Act 1. It's called the
yep.
Werewolf Prowler. Yeah. So I
Yep.
was like, I don't think that's the form anymore. Like, it can't
No.
be, right? Because there it is as an enemy in, like, the forest in Act 1, you know?
No. It's something
Yeah.
special, something wild. They're going in with the transforms. I mean, the
Yeah,
succubus where you turn into Lilith. I mean, that
right.
blew me away. I
That Yeah, I thought that was gonna be, like, a different ascendancy, but it's actually the same one as the Infernalist.
yep.
They're
Yep.
on the same ascendancy. So that was something that I was like, I think we saw two ascendancies there, but then but it was just one. So
Yeah.
I was on the right
Well,
track with that. But yeah,
yeah.
that was cool. That actually seeing that made me go, oh, dude, I wonder what the wolf is. you know, and
Eh,
from a D2 background, the werewolf in D2 is very cool, like very cool. So I hope it's awesome. I'm saying I'm hesitant because I'm like, I hope they really got it right, you know? Because I will be a little disappointed if the wolf form isn't that cool for Druid, because Druid's one of my favorite in D2.
They've been cooking for so long. I obviously am a hype lord for grinding gear games, but I'm like that for a reason.
Yeah.
And when I saw that presentation Thursday night, while I was watching it, the opening cinematic that took me back to when I was 5 years old playing Diablo 2. I don't know why my dad let me watch those cinematics. Holy crap. I am so fascinated with how a team so lean is able to make this stuff. I mean,
Yeah.
it's crazy.
Is the cinematic GGG, or do they hire out for that? Do you
They
know?
hired somebody out to do that.
Yeah.
No, I
Okay.
saw
All
it
right.
posted. I can't remember the studio name exactly, but they did an excellent job.
Dude,
The entire interaction between the hooded one and the Iron Count. I mean,
yeah.
oh man,
The hooded one gives me Tyrael vibes from D2. But
isn't
yeah,
he?
it was
Mm-hmm.
amazing, dude. I love that you could see the runes light up on his sword that are like binding him. That was a
Yep.
really cool touch. It looked great, and I liked that the cinematic reflected the game itself too, like the gameplay, like graphics.
Mm-hmm.
Like yeah, it was like cinematic and it was like enhanced and everything, but it still looked like the Iron Count. You know,
Yep.
it wasn't like, oh, who is that again? Like I could tell
Exactly.
who it was. You know
Yeah.
what else I was thinking about is, since they hired out for that cinematic, it probably feels a lot like when you hire someone to like put in like a porch or like do your roof for you, where you're just like, oh, I got all this work to do. Or I could hire someone and then in 2 days it's done, and like
Yeah.
I'm imagining like Jonathan at GGG being like, yeah, we hired out for that. And then they get the product and they're like, look at that. Doesn't that look
Oh,
great? You know what I mean? And it does. It
100%.
looked really good. The cinematic was good.
And can you imagine these guys who they set out with PoE 1 to make the spiritual successor to T2 finally get their hands on a high quality cinematic? Oh, they must have been geeking out. I mean,
Yeah, I think they probably were. Like some people cuz like in D2, I actually haven't watched the cinematics since like the first time I rewatched them for Diablo 2 Resurrected. Right? Like I just skip them every time.
right.
So you kind of only watch them once, you know what I mean? But it is really cool to give that like immersion and that world building in between the acts and stuff like that. I think it's a really nice touch. It shows a level of polish on the game that probably wasn't really there before for PoE 1, I'm guessing, because I know this because
Yeah.
people are making a big deal out of the cinematic, you
Oh,
know?
yeah.
So like,
Yeah.
yeah, I think it's great. It shows that it's like, hey, we're like the real deal, guys. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
Um, yeah.
Infamously, PoE 1 has a single cinematic and it is trash.
Okay.
It's very bad. It's during Act 5, so halfway through the campaign, and it lasts a few seconds. And when
Yeah.
it ends, you're just sitting there thinking, what was that a cinematic? I don't even know. It's bad.
That's
So
funny.
when the PoE community saw that on Thursday, everybody was losing their minds. Now,
It was
Michael, I have a few kind of broad questions that I want to
sure.
pick your mind about as we
Okay.
head into PoE 2. Lots of people are saying, "Oh my goodness, greatest ARPG ever." We haven't played it yet, so I'm saying that as well, but I haven't touched it. If they deliver on what they're promising and what they've shown physically to us, I think it will be. However, say you're Jonathan Rogers. your game director hat, okay? You've been playing Diablo 2 for the past 20 years. You've been doing all this analysis of Path of Exile 2 and other games. If you could design your own ARPG, what features or systems or innovations would make up your dream ARPG? Maybe like the top 2 or 3. Maybe something that's missing from today's era of games, something that maybe Diablo 2 had that games today seem to just have tossed out. Anything come to mind?
I mean, that's a really hard question because right now, the thing that drew me to D2 for so long is kind of what we talked about earlier with the replayability. You know, it's just like the build diversity and variety. But for PoE2, they also now have just like the combat mechanic. Like there's a guy named Jimbo on YouTube that I watched, and he did it. Do you know who that is? I don't know. He
Jimmy
went to
slash
one of the events.
Jimbo, the RuneScape guy?
Maybe I don't know. He did a video where he went to one of the events.
Yep,
He's
it was
never
Jimbo.
played an ARPG. He said he'd
Yep,
never even played any ARPG.
yep.
And what he said in that video was it felt really good just to hit stuff with a weapon in the game. And he played warrior, and he was actually using a two-handed sword in his footage, which
Yeah.
there are no skills for.
He was just
So
auto
he
attacking.
didn't know what he was doing. You know what I mean? But he said he had a great time just hitting stuff and then kind of like figuring out like, oh, I need a mace for those skills. Okay. Um, but and so what I would want is what they're doing, which is great, impactful combat with build diversity. I mean, I can't honestly, with just a D2 background, I could not have even dreamed of the amount of skill interactions and support interactions that they have. Like, that's how many are there? Like, how many interactions do you think there are between all this? Like a million? I don't know. It's just like, that to me is very impressive. Like I can't top that, I don't think. You know, all I can say is that if I'm Jonathan Rogers, I would just want to keep that magic intact for as long as possible. You know,
100%. Yeah,
that's like all I would want to do is like make sure that the game still feels awesome just to hit something, you know, at all times. And if you lose that, if it starts to not feel fun to kill stuff anymore, then you kind of need to redirect, you know? That's what I think. So I think that's like a big thing is just the replayability. It's going to have that. It's got the fantasy of the build variety that you can do. It's got to have that, you know, for an
yeah.
ARPG. And it absolutely has that. Like I was already thinking about just the ascendancies and being like, dude, the mercenary, any freaking build could use that both those ascendancies, it seems like. The one that kills stuff and explodes them on kill for 100% of their life. I was like, is that going to get nerfed right away? That seems really good, you know?
That's busted. Let me tell you, as a Path of Exile 1 player who's seen that node in PoE 1, it's busted.
Yeah,
Very
it's got to
cool.
be.
Very
Yeah,
cool.
it's got to be. But like, you know, I might roll a mercenary and then just go monk skills and then, you know what I mean? And then just do that just to see
Hey,
what
there you
happens.
go.
Yeah.
That's
So
badass. Now,
I'm super looking forward to that, you know. Is there anything that you thought in the showcase was kind of like not that impressive though?
ooh, okay. There's one thing, and it's
Okay.
kind of spicy, and I've seen one other person talk about this,
All right.
and it has to do with the end game and the vibe there. The map of the Atlas looked like it was out of like a cheerful, bright, almost like exploration or Civ type game, right?
Heroes of
It,
Might and Magic style thing or something.
right. It looked so cheery and not like what I would imagine exploring the dark continent of Rayclast,
Yeah.
especially during, a time of strife, and obviously we're battling against all these terrible forces. It just looked almost like bubbly. That's how I would describe it. All the colors were
That's a
very
good point.
bright. It was all green, right? There were awesome landmarks and everything, but it was just so, it was like happy. I don't expect
Yeah.
that. And I don't know if like the way you entered the Atlas looked badass. You're in this ziggurat and there's all these portals that with this big map device summoning around, and then you click on the Atlas and it's this bright green color exploration world map. Now, I think that it's possible that they'll edit that a bit. The maps of the Axe used to be kind of blocky, not
Mhm.
impressive. They've changed those drastically. They look much better.
Okay.
That was one thing that stuck out to me. Like it was very impressive looking, but the vibe was way off.
I see what you're saying. You know, I kind of didn't even pick up on that. Probably because the end game information was coming in. I was trying to understand it so much at first that I kind of that slipped past me. But yeah, I see what you're saying. Now that I think about it, it looks really good. But you're right; it looks kind of cheerful.
It's
Yeah,
it,
you're
it
right.
is. It doesn't reflect because the dude. I mean, the opening cinematic. That's Ray class.
Dark,
That's
gritty.
the
Yeah,
story, right?
yeah,
And the gameplay reveal trailer. The dude who we're working with in Endgame, spoilers, some people, I mean, if you've seen the trailer, you know, is Doriani.
yeah,
That's the guy that we see in the opening gameplay trailer committing those terrible atrocities on real people, you know, binding their heads together, ripping
yeah,
off the flesh from people's scalps and implanting
yeah,
them on the pyramids. That's the guy we're working with. And we're going into this, you know, super cheerful overworld
yeah.
map. So that fell off with me, but now you're causing me to kind of go through my mind. The only other thing that I thought was frightening, and I don't know if it was Twitch, the frame drops that occurred at some points during the gameplay,
Hmm.
because that is a fearful thing with Path of Exile, because there's so many things happening on the screen, and
Yeah,
because the graphical quality is so high. Is this going to be very difficult to play on a lot of people's computers? Path of Exile 1, you can actually play okay, but the graphics, you can bring them down to a very bad level. Will this destroy people's abilities to read everything, dodge abilities, and the like? Because in Path of Exile 1,
yeah,
it doesn't matter if it's choppy or you can't see anything because you're just killing everything. In Path of Exile 2, you need to be able to actually maneuver and see all the abilities coming your way and track enemies. And if your computer is not performing the best, well, then
yeah,
kind of
yeah.
rough.
I know, right?
Those were
It's
the
like,
two things.
yeah, it's
And then,
it's a
oh,
free
there is
game,
one
but
other
you have to
thing.
spend $2,000 on a computer to play it. Yeah.
Oh yeah,
Um.
there's one other
So
thing, Michael,
yeah.
and it's something I'm scared about. People thought that Path of Exile 2 would be a reset on the bloat or complexity of Path of Exile 1. When I saw the end game map, I and systems interacting, I sure hope there's a good onboarding system. Because if a
Mm,
new player can get through the campaign with all the tutorials and all that, and then they're dropped into that without any further explanation, oh boy. Oh boy, it's going
yeah.
to be tough.
I think like once you get through the acts, and then do like the cruel difficulty of them, you'll probably just be invested enough
Yeah.
in the combat and stuff and in the interactions that you'll want to like keep going. Yeah, that's what I think at least.
Yeah.
Um yeah, the only thing that the only like the lowest point to me in the whole reveal was actually during the Pathfinder Ascendancy reveal.
Oh, what
And
part of it?
so and it was just when she was throwing those concoction flasks. And I remember looking at it going, "That's kinda weird." Like, the ranger already has, like, the ability to, like, do all those things with just the bow at a better rate.
Mm,
And so I was like,
mm.
"Why do you need" like, maybe I don't understand what the value of it is, but, like, because they showed 2. They showed one that bleeds and one that shocks. And I was like, like, and so here's the ranger. She has all these cool, like, the stuff they showed on there was like the multiple poison stacking and spreading, obviously awesome and
Mhm.
great, even like say, someone who goes down the witch tree or something. But then like the gameplay all of a sudden was like her just like kind of slowing down and just being like whoop blop,
I know what you're talking about
and
now.
I was like, that looks really not like as polished and useful as anything else they've showed in this entire showcase. And so that to me, I was like, what's the point of those like throwing that flask? Like what do you get out of that? Because if it's just like, oh, you bled them or you shocked them or you froze them, say maybe that's another one. You can do that with escape shot, you can do that with the
Mm.
vines, you can do that with the lightning arrows, you can electrocute with electrocuting arrow. Like you already have at your disposal so many other ways to do those things. I was kind of like, what is the purpose of throwing the flask? I didn't get it. And maybe
You're
that's yeah.
you might be onto something though, dude, because in Path of Exile 1, there's that archetype. It's not the Pathfinder, but there are skill gems that are concoctions and they interact with your flasks, right? But in Path
Yeah.
of Exile 1, you can buff up your flasks, you can do a whole bunch of really cool things to make it a very fun, different type of playstyle. But in
Okay.
Path of Exile 2, they just revamped the entire flask system, and I believe the Pathfinder still interacts with your flasks in some way. I wonder if there's some kind of like disconnect or flux going on right now.
Maybe they
But I
said it
totally get
cost
what you're saying.
charges. They said it cost flash charges
It
too.
does. So that's the
And so I
thing.
was
Like
like,
they just
why would
changed
you waste
everything.
those? Yeah, like, why waste them
Right?
on that? I don't get it. So anyway, that was the only thing that when that happened, I literally was like, wait, that looks weird, and that was the only point. Everything else I was like, this is sweet, so that was the lowest point, was literally when the Pathfinder just threw a flask and I went, what? Like that's kind of dumb.
You got to see
And like
those 3 other flask types, man. There's 3. There were
sure,
5 that you can choose from, which is kind of
sure.
cool. I like
Or
that.
maybe on a different like build, it would make more sense. Like
Right.
maybe if you have minions and you like just chuck a flask and I don't know. But I'm just saying that's what I thought was the least impressive thing of the entire showcase. And that was like 2 seconds of the entire thing. So it's not that bad.
Well,
But like yeah,
totally
that was the
fine.
only thing.
And you can support those too, which is pretty cool. So that's
Right.
nice. With
So
support
yeah, so
gems.
I don't even know how maybe there's a really cool way to use them and I can't think of it right now. But
Dude,
that
we'll
was it.
find out on December 6th. But before we get there, what
Yeah.
is the one thing that you are most looking forward to that has not yet been explored? Like that we kind of know about, but they didn't
The
dive
unique
into it. I can
the
give one
uniques.
easy example, like unique items. Dude, we've seen like
Absolutely unique,
5.
dude.
It's unique. Oh, I
Absolutely.
stole it from you.
Absolutely unique. Dude, okay. D2 is all about just item chasing and item finding. You know what I mean? I cannot wait to identify uniques in this game. It's gonna be awesome. Okay. You've like because every time you're gonna be like, oh dude, a new build just came to mind. You know what I mean? That's so sweet. Or like the lower level ones they've shown. Okay, I'm gonna roll a new character and just load them up with all these uniques that have no level requirement and stuff and just blast through. It's gonna be so fun to do that, you know? So absolutely the uniques, man. Like, oh, and for the uniques too, in D2, one thing that really like like one thing that you can do in that game that makes uniques and runewords really cool is having off class abilities. Okay.
Yes.
So like an aura or a skill from another class onto your class, right? And that's hard to do in Diablo 2. But in Path of Exile 2, it's like obviously the name of the game. So it's like, what could you do with a unique to have this principle of like something that's off class? And my thinking was, okay, so say I'm playing monk, right? And I ID a quarterstaff and it says something like, when an arrow is placed on it, it magically bends the quarterstaff into a bow, you know? So like you could have so that way you don't have to have it on swap. There's no delay penalty for swapping.
Yeah.
And you could just like frozen locust backflip, escape shot, immediate backflip. And I was like, that would be a way to differentiate. I'm not saying you have to do that for every unique, but like
You're
one
cooking,
or
man.
two, one or two here or there that allows skills for other weapons on a weapon. Like I was like, that makes sense to me. I feel like that's coming.
Michael, man, you are built for Path of Exile 1. You missed the boat, but you're here in time for Path of Exile 2, and it has been
Yeah.
so lovely chatting with you today, man. I want everybody in the chat, everybody watching the VOD, can you let everyone know where they can find you? Are you on Twitch, YouTube, Twitter, whatever? The floor is yours, dude.
Yeah, so the best place is just YouTube right now, man. Like I have Twitter and stuff. I don't use it like that much, but just YouTube off Meta Michael. That's it. If you go there, I have a ton of D2 build videos and I have an album that I released just a few days ago that has all of the tracks that I wrote and recorded. And it even has like the town themes that I did when I'm like talking and stuff. If you've seen any of my videos and you hear this like guitar ambiance in the background, that's me. And I put them on the album. It's called ARPG Prog Rock Volume 1. And it's on Spotify now, it's on YouTube Music, and it's on my channel as like a 52-minute video. So I would just say like you can check that stuff out. You can check out my builds if you want. But I am going to move forward with PoE 2, once I have something to show. And I'll do something like that. Like it'll be very similar. Like, oh, here's the thing, and maybe here's like a little combat montage with some music I wrote. So
Yeah.
I'll continue that with PoE 2. I'm planning on it.
Awesome. Well, Michael, great job not breaking NDA. We are all so proud of you. Everyone in the chat on YouTube, on Twitch, please go subscribe to Off Meta Michael right now. I will link his channel in the chat once we hop off this Discord call. Michael, dude, we're going to have to chat some more. All right. This was wonderful. I think that you are going to love PoE 2, and everybody watching and all the new players coming to experience this game. Dude, you're going to pop. I love
dude.
your stuff.
Thanks, man. And D2 players, this is it. This is the next game. All right. Like, they finally made a game for D2 players. You know what I mean? Like, everyone that's been playing D2 for 20 years and everyone, here you go. This is it right here. Okay. I promise. It's awesome.
Get this man in here.
Oh, howdy.
Oh my God, is that real?
Mate, this was actually the helmet that I designed my logo from. It's been sitting on my back shelf for about 7 years.
Bro, no way.
It was the cheapest thing I've ever bought on eBay. And yeah, so I've got the dirty mustache from Movember. And we're rocking a helmet because this is probably what everybody wants to see anyway. So
Oh my God, dude. That's awesome. Let me make sure you're good. Oh, your name. I gotta change your name, bro. 1 second.
you can call me Michael all day
Oh
long.
no, it's fine. It's okay. Dude, I don't know how I don't know this. Jorgen? Organ? What the heck, man? What is it?
So you can say it as, if you're from Denmark, you can say it as Jorgen, or you could say it as Jorgen. It doesn't matter.
Excellent.
Either or, easy as it goes. And for everybody, I was keeping track of everybody. Welcome back, you filthy exiles, to a Talkative Try and Jorgen stream.
Perfect, you filthy exile. Thank you so much for that introduction. Dude, I feel like for the past 3 months, we've been keeping the hype rolling. And oh my goodness, have we been vindicated or what?
Oh, mate, like, I would say if I said I didn't feel like I was a 10-year-old waiting for Christmas Day and sitting up all night looking at the Christmas gifts under the tree right now, I'd be lying. And it's at Christmas time too, to double it up. So, you know, if that doesn't hype you up, I don't know what does. I hadn't taken like proper leave from work for like 6 years. And then and Path of Exile 2 is the thing that shook me for 2 weeks. So you know,
2 weeks. 2 weeks to blast, man.
Oh, dude, and I'm gonna go full degenerate Path of Exile 2 streamer.
Are you gonna wear the helmet during Goblin mode time, or is this temporary?
I think potentially we might need to upgrade the helmet and go to another level, because Path of Exile 2 has absolutely went to another level. So it's time for the helmet to change and get more elaborate.
Like a metal helmet, perhaps?
I'm thinking like possibly with like fur and like, you know, just to sell it even more, like because this one is pretty uncomfortable. It's probably going to leave a dent in my forehead for the rest of the day, but
totally worth it, man. Now, it's surreal that we're finally here, right? We've been grabbing up every scrap of information for the past few months, and now we just have this massive buffet sitting in front of us with everything that we now know. What is exciting you the most about the game?
I was a bit sort of like, there's no delve, until I think I put a video out yesterday where I started to unpack the mechanics in the game. And so I wasn't skeptical of the game, just no delve, you know, delve. But the whole end game is just delve. It's entirely delve. Like the biomes, I didn't even realize it until I watched the footage back, and this is one of those things where I've watched it like 4 or 5 times now, and it's just like the little intricate nuances in the wording that they're using, and it's like, I remember that mechanic, like the corruption influence, right, or the corruption is the old Elder Shaper system. Now, a lot of newer players haven't seen this because they weren't around for Atlas of Worlds. You know, but for me, I remember it like it was yesterday. But yeah, the crazy thing is just seeing the progression of where it started. So I went to the original ExileCon, like what, 5-6 years ago.
Yeah.
And I'd only like started creating a roundabouts then. So I think actually before that I started creating back in Breach League, which is ironic. One of my first videos was about what are breaches. And then basically, yeah, we're getting Breach League back. I like the throwback to the older league mechanics as well. You know, even Expedition's a great league, especially for currency farming, but Breach is a special place in the history of Path of Exile because it's one of the leagues that really defined the game. The other league that I enjoyed was Legion. Not Legion, sorry. It was Legacy League as well, but that's just showing my age. But no, the reveals are crazy. And the fact that they're releasing so much of the end game, and that's I guess the biggest comment. Like, you would have seen in comments on your videos, the second that you make any comment about, the real Path of Exile starts at the end game, you get like a ton of people that are like baking on you because they're like, I like the campaign. It's great to like the campaign for the 25 hours to 50 hours that you'll get on that first playthrough. But then it's going to be league on league, and you're going to play a new character. So we're probably going to optimize that to, say, 7 to 10 hours on average once we figure everything out. And then what you've got left is that end game. So you need to have an enormous end game. And I was just watching your stream a little earlier around the talk around the developer for Diablo, right? So they're just salty because they didn't put an end game in the game. So they released a game with no end game. I went back to it like a few weeks ago or a few months ago, and I was like, "What end game? There's no end game." And then you see Path of Exile 2. Oh yeah, by the way, we're just going to release 25-30% of our 11 years of content as remastered on the very start of it with 50 bosses. That's only half of it, with 6 classes with only 2 ascendancies. That's about 30% of the total. It's an insane amount of content. Like, what do you do with that? It's just, yeah. So I was sort of sitting there. Every time I watch it, I'm like, man, this is ridiculous. I don't even, I've got an idea of what I want to play. And I know if DM's in there, I know he's keen on shield builds. He's a big Shield Crush fan as well. So we're going to be rolling out with, the idea of earthbending the ground, pulling up, ground, and then smashing your shield and blowing that up and throwing shrapnel over the screen is awesome. I love it. It's just, but and that's only the Titan class. I think I saw the leaked ascendancy points coming out.
Dude. Yeah.
Double armor, 20% extra life. But if double armor's on that, right, that was the original ascendancy for the Jug, right? So, okay, well, what are they going to do with the Jug? Like, what the hell is that Marauder ascendancy class system going to even look like? Bro, it's going to be something totally insane.
Yeah, bro, I think that they might be retiring the vast majority of the PoE 1 ascendancies, and they're just bringing in brand new stuff. That's my crackpot crazy theory.
Mate, the Warbringer is literally an ascendancy point out of the Zerker. So they've just made a shout class. So, so Zerker might not be that. Even if they kept them, they're just going to be something totally different. It might just be the Rager or something like that. You're going to have a rave like Umcha class where you're just going.
Now, what do you think about that, Jorgen, as a Path of Exile 1 player? The way that they've gone to design the ascendancies for PoE 2 with all this skill focus. I mean, for example, the Chronomancer, all the skills or all the passive or the nodes we saw, they were skills. Like, they might be going in with that design on these ascendancies. What are your thoughts on that? Fan, not a fan?
I think it's fine. And the reason why I think it's fine is because the question that raises is, does that skill go into your skill bar, right? So does it include in the 9 skills? Can you support it? Is another question that comes to mind, because we don't really know that, right? We've seen the skill, but
no, we do. It can be supported. Yep.
It can be supported. There you go. Yep. So basically, that means that if you think about it, right, so you've got cast on shock, you've got cast on stun, right? So you could potentially run, like when I think of Chronomancer, I think of slams, right? I don't think of a spellcaster, cold conversion slams. So potentially you could have a cast on chill Chronomancer that then cast time freeze when you chill with a certain lead up skill. Then you could change that. You could chain that with like Hammer of the Gods and have 100% cold conversion Hammer of the Gods with like a one-handed or double-handed dual wield setup. So like that's possible, right? So when you start build cooking, it gets almost infinite.
Now I saw that, Jorgen. I haven't watched the video. I haven't read the comments, but I saw you put out like a build cooking video. What's the reception? Because I know the game's not out yet, and people are probably like, hey, slow down, dude. But I mean, with what we've seen, you can cook ideas and concepts, right?
Exactly. I've had 2 negative comments, and both go back to Diablo 4. So the moral of the story is, you can sit there. There's that skill planner that's on. I don't know if you've got the link for. I think you put the link up a few weeks ago. There's the PoE 2 skill planner, right? Yep. So you can plan the skills at a basic level. The thing that will define builds, and this is probably what changed. I think I was listening earlier to what you're saying about what changed in that play test that you guys were at, is the mindset around how you build a build in Path of Exile 2 is totally different to Path of Exile 1. And it's not based on what is your optimum skill setup for the 1 or 2 skills or the support gems. It's what skill combinations lead you to the most damage output and mobility. And there's two ways of looking at this. There's going to be skill combinations that lead into high-end single target, and skill combinations that are going to end in like high-end clear speed. But you're not going to get the balance between the two unless you sort of drop a bit of mobility and a bit of offense or DPS numbering to be able to sort of meet a balance. And maybe that's the more defensive play style that players might want to go. But essentially, you know, your options are almost endless. Like the monk, for example, I think Jung Rohn did a video on his where, you know, you've got the all damage leeches mana, right? So then you could have mind over matter, and the theory is that you could have an infinite, you know, immortal build because you just constantly keep leeching mana back onto your character and never die. And as it scales up with damage and speed, you know, you're going to become an endless powerhouse of just, you know, immortality. And then you just crank your ES up to the top. You know, we don't know if things like Ivory Tower are in the game, so potentially you'll have like an Ivory Tower mana stacking, you know, monk, and yeah, like that's some of the crazy stuff. Like Mercenary, I don't look at the Mercenary as a crossbow class. I look at it as a sword class, because the concentration definitely would indicate, like, if you stomp the ground, knock their concentration, you could use a striking skill, and effectively one-shot enemies because you've got that 30% upfront damage as well, so you could scale that up. There's just tons of combinations I look at when I'm looking at that. Like, my favorite so far is the Titan. I love the Titan, but you know, one of my builds was lightning tendrils, right? And we haven't seen that come back into the game, but they did put incineration into the game, which is a channeling skill.
Dude.
Yep. So, you know, you'd think, oh, okay, well, you'd play that on the Sork, right? But actually, the Infernalist with the generation of whatever it is for the flame skill generation, that's going to mean that you could use channeling to ramp that skill up. And then basically, when you ignite, then you could have an almighty all-screen explosion, and then God knows how many, you know, things you can link into those meta skills as well. So you could have like 3 bars of spells or 2 bars of spells. You could have, you know, freeze, ignite, because we know that we had elemental proliferation in Path of Exile 1, right? So you could do all 3 ailments. So you could use 1 metagem to trigger all 3 ailments, and then have 3 metagems do a triple auto cast skill, for example, just from channeling. And then the rest are just defensive skills. So I think the comment about, like, you know, leading to, are there going to be one button builds? Like, I think, you know, notoriously GGG has always tried to design around that, but the creator community and build creator communities elaborate enough that, yeah, we're probably going to have plenty of one button builds. I'm definitely going to be making one button builds. Like,
By the end of it, yeah. You know, we heard from Off Meta Michael about the Falling Thunder skill from the monk and the ability to quickly recharge power charges. You know, you could probably just be infinite falling thundering everything, and that the ability can be buffed out the wazoo where it's basically screen wide. That's crazy. What else are you gonna need? Unless you come across something that's like immune to, or not immune, but resistant to lightning, whatever, you know.
Well, like Ice Tomb, right? They released that item, and it's got like you throw back, you know, you can freeze enemies when you get hit, right? So theoretically, you could run a really tanky character, right, with a shield, and that would count as an on hit if your shield gets hit, for example. So you'd have raised shield, increase your stun immunity, run Ice Tomb, and then have like a Sork that could do cast on freeze, for example. And then you'd be constantly casting on freeze, like an auto bomber setup just from getting hit.
God.
So you could set it up with, like, you know, increase the amount of ailment effect or whatever with your skills, right? Or curses or hexes, and then basically just face tank into a pack of enemies and just let out every single spell imaginable with cast on freeze. So these are some of the things that come to mind. Like, we haven't seen enough about the unique gearing to know much about the game either.
Almost
and that's
nothing.
The thing that, you know, Warcry Singer builds. There was an item that they added in, I think, in Settlers or the League before 3.24 that exploded corpses, and it didn't really work. I tested it, but in Path of Exile 2, you know, we're probably going to get a ton of buff skills for doing damage with war cries. So Seismic Cry is base damage now. Didn't have base damage in PoE 1. So there's yeah, I don't even know how to look from a build perspective. It's just like mind-numbing the amount of stuff
I
you
mean,
can make.
Path of Exile players, we have a few drops of information about builds. Jorgen, 8-minute tangent on it. See, we're going to go crazy once the game is actually out. And we have probably 100+ uniques to work with, all the ascendancy notes, because we haven't seen 5+ of the big nodes on some of these ascendancies, like the Infernalist, which is supposed to be the minion ascendancy. I read that in an article. I guess there must be some minion-based nodes on there to buff it up for the Witch, because the Necromancer, it doesn't sound like it's going to make it to PoE 2, at least for the time being. That's all on this demon form, demon dog, Infernalist type class. Are you a bit sad that some classics might not make it into the sequel for the time being?
The only thing, like the only class, so that the only, to be honest with you, I've played so much Path of Exile. Like I think I'm at like 8 or 9 or 10,000 hours right across 2 clients, 11 years. I've seen my original videos the other day, and I used to look really slim in the face, and then I got really fat, and I was like, oh damn. That's how long I've been playing this game. I'm actually really happy that they've changed everything, and like a few of them were like jading to look at, like definitely the was it the Chronomancer is something that I've never seen in Path of Exile before. It's just not a conventional setup. The Gemling Legionnaire is really interesting as well, because if you wanted a tanky character, right, with that uses crossbows, I wouldn't run the Witch Hunter. I would run the Gemling Legionnaire for the overcapping. We still have Cloak of Flame in the game, right? So we have fire conversion to physical, which means you overcap your fire. And in Path of Exile 2, that mechanic's going to be relatively consistent with how it worked in Path of Exile 1, because that's just, the cornerstone of Path of Exile. So, I'm not too concerned by the changes, to be honest with you. I like the Titan, just looks cooler. Also, like, everything just looks like the ancestral support guys that spawn with, like, totems. And like they look like freaking earthbenders from bloody The Last Airbender. Like you slam the ground with your foot, raise a totem, and then it does huge amounts. Like I think in part of it, like I started looking at builds recently with Path of Exile. This league in PoE 1, I went through. I couldn't even tell you how many builds I went through. And the problem with Path of Exile, it's ascendancy sort of. They've gotten to a point where you can only take them so far. They're not as creative as what they used to be, and that's because the game is labored. It's just over the years, like we've kept it going. Like every league, there's a new meta. We're challenging the metas, coming up with new builds and new build options. But we're at a point now where if they didn't change the game, you would end up like Diablo 4, which is people would play it for 5 minutes, get bored, and they wouldn't worry about it again. Having all the new ascendancies and the configurations allows them to basically reset the mark to sort of day dot zero. And I think that's good for older players, because we're probably getting a bit exhausted with the old setup of Path of Exile 1. But for newer players, it puts everybody on the same level sort of playing field. So the older players don't really have an advantage except for understanding the mechanics, whereas the new players don't know anything. And we can work together to figure out all of these new ascendancies. The one that they haven't even featured yet, which I'm the most excited about, though, is the Templar. Like, what are they going to do? I reckon there's going to be a Crusader class. Like,
they're going
Paladin class. That the big criticism for Diablo, where's the Paladin? Like I wanted a Paladin. I want to play Bombardment Paladin. Like why can't I do that? So
Jorgen, can you imagine the Ferguson tweet when the Paladin is announced for Path of Exile 2? I can't. Oh.
I've already had a look. Like I had a look just before, because I was like behind the 8 ball there. He's just getting roasted. And he deserves it too. Like
why did he do that? What's going on, man?
Like,
do you have a justification? Because I couldn't think of one. It's either he's jealous, he's scared, or he's smug and thinks, oh yeah, they're stealing stuff from Diablo 4. What explanation could there possibly be to release that yesterday?
Well, it's pretty simple. They had 4,500 viewers on their Twitch stream on the release morning versus 448,000. So, I'm pretty sure the numbers are stacking up from a, I don't know if you're a corporate guy. I'm an accountant, right? So, from my perspective, looks like ROI is looking pretty bad for Blizzard right now versus GGG. And there's no way to come back from this. Like, they've had 2 years to cook something out of Diablo 4, and they've just failed at every interval. Like, I was crazy enough to go and spend money on the expansion of Diablo 4, thinking maybe, just maybe, this will be redeemable. And I sort of played the Druid for a little bit, and I was like, this is horrible. And then I tried to come back to it again with like Barbarian. I was like, it's still horrible. And you sort of, I went back to Path of Exile 1 and I was like, well, if Path of Exile 1 is their competitor, they've just like, they're not even on the same playing field. I saw a meme this morning where it's like, oh, you know, the Tower of, the Pyramid of Doom or whatever out of Lord of the Rings, Mount
Mhm.
Doom. And it's like, you know, here's Diablo 4. And, you know, they're like, oh, you can't challenge us. It's like Last Epoch. And they're like, we might not be able to challenge you, but these guys can, and there's Path of Exile right at the bottom going, ha ha ha, yeah, let's go. Like,
Yeah,
um,
100%, man.
you know,
It's
yeah,
it's
it's
gonna be a
insane.
wild time. I mean, I would hope that it inspires people like 11th Hour Games and Blizzard to strive to do better. I mean, this lean team, that's what I keep going back to, of 250 to 300 developers over 6, 7 years has created this. I was blown. I did not
Yeah.
think we were going to get everything we received that day. I was like, okay, there's going to be like a skeleton of an end game. We're going to get 3 acts. You know, they're just struggling a little bit when it comes to the content pipeline. Maybe we'll get one ascendancy for each of the classes. That's it. And then just when they kept listing off thing after thing and diving in deeper to each system, I mean, my mind was blown. The fact that Jorgen, pinnacle bosses in launch of early access. What did you think about the Zest fight that we saw? The Breach
Oh,
guy.
mate. You know, I think the comment I hear a lot, and I agree with, is, you know, my balls are tickled. And you know, I got to agree with it. Like, I was sitting there on stream with everyone. We're like, what the actual hell? Like, to think about, they did this though while releasing like Settlers of Kalgur. So they released a league that had more content than Diablo 4 in totality and Path of Exile 1, and then they go make a game that's like 20 times bigger. And then, the biggest comment here was like, I think I put a video out about this a little while ago. Like, I saw all the comments, as you would have seen over the last few years, with like people going, oh, you know, it's not going to have as much, or it's going to be slower, or anything like that. And they managed expectations so well that like they released like anything and everything that they gave us up until the other day. Basically, we knew nothing, and then we walked into that announcement going, what the hell? Like, you know, the reservation from the community about, oh, we're only going to get 3 acts, when they did the apology video and then sort of released that information in that was it TGC TCG.
Yep.
You know, everyone's like, oh, you know, we've been shafted here. We're not going to get anything out of this. And it's sort of like, I knew it, you probably knew, a bunch of other of us creators probably knew at the time, yeah, there's probably going to be a lot more to this. Like, it wasn't like at face value, it sounded bad. And then they come out and they're like, oh yeah, by the way, yeah, you're only going to get 3 acts, but here's the whole bloody end game, go crazy. And by the way, it's the whole end game reduced by like 66%. So, you know, and that's just crazy. Like, who does that? Like, the only other game that I know that's gotten close to this is like BG3 or like Elden
Right.
Ring. And the other crazy thing, and I think I saw something on this earlier, is like, they're not done. So for anyone thinking this is just the release, right? We get a league expansion every 3 to 4 months. Like, they
Mm-hmm.
haven't confirmed that cycle yet, but who knows what the first league, the 1.01 or the 1.0 league's going to be. So it's
Mm-hmm.
very likely, while they've announced, oh yeah, we're going to release all the content on the release, right? And this comes back to like, was it the Awakening or something like that in Path of
Yeah.
Exile 1? So like
2.0.
they released, exactly, they released the game, and then they're like, oh, was it a Sacrifice of the Val? So like they
Oh,
released the
1.0. Yep.
game, yeah, they released the game, and then they're like, oh, by the way, guys, so we didn't tell you this. Here's like all this other expansion content on top as well. And by the way, it's all free. Go crazy. No,
Yeah.
no cost. So don't pay the $30 if you can't afford the $30, sort of thing. So like, you know, nobody's doing this, and it's going to shift the entire model around how ARPGs are approached, I think, after this. Like, but who's going to compete with this? Like,
It's going to be tough. And the fascinating thing, Jorgen, is what Jonathan touched upon in that interview with Ziggy D after the reveal. And almost everyone who's been working on Path of Exile 2 for the past 5, 6 years, they've never worked on a live game before. These people have been working on content that has been behind closed doors for the vast majority of the public. And then, once it launches on December 6th in the early access, they're shifting into live service mode. And GGG prides themselves on being the best darn live service creators out there. And they're going to be creating masses amount of content. This far larger team is going to be creating content that's coming out every 3 to 4 months. The
Yep.
bulk of GGG has been hidden for the past 5 years, and we've still been getting all this Path of Exile 1 stuff. Imagine once all of them are refocused on live service, except those who are working on PoE 3, of course, right? Like, what is that going to look like, man? As someone who has been around, you said Breach was when you started, right?
Yeah. Oh, I started. Yeah, Breach was content. I was
Yeah.
like playing from. I've got the Kiwi pet.
Oh, you have the Kiwi pet. Can
Yeah.
you? So, as someone who's been playing since the closed beta, open beta, can you just talk about like the development journey? What has that like been like to you, seeing the team evolve and being a part of it? I mean,
I'll tell you what my first experience was with Path of Exile. So I was a really broke uni student. We were waiting for Diablo 3 all those years ago. I used to work for EB Games actually. Before I was an accountant, I was a salesman at EB Games, or GameStop is the equivalent, right? As we all like to do that job. And I remember a buddy of mine. His name was Kairos. He's like, "Hey," because I was in a clan back then called Stomp, or One Blood it ended up being, and he's like, "Hey, there's this cool ARPG," because we were big into like Age of Conan back when Age of Conan was a thing, and we were like, "Oh yeah, cool." We were looking for other games, and he's like, "Hey, there's this really cool game," and it was in like closed beta at the time. This was the original like Path of Exile when it first got announced and everything. I saw the trailer, so I was like, "Hell yeah, I'm gonna buy into this." I spent like $25. I got the Kiwi pet, or sorry, was it the Rower pet? Yeah, it was the Rower. So I got the Regal Rower. So I got the Regal skin. And sometimes you got to put it on stream just to flex. I've been playing the game that long, and then I realized, oh damn, I'm old. And so we sort of loaded up. It was back when you only had 2 acts. So the first thing they shipped were 2 acts. They had Act 1 and Act 2 as we saw it. And the thing that stuck out to us was in the forest when you go and fight the 3 bosses. So Oak, or was it Alira or Kira? I can never remember the names.
Crichton.
And yeah, Crichton and the witch lady.
Alira.
And
you got it.
Yeah, Alira. Yeah. I've played it so many times, you just stop even worrying about the lore. Like I just see it into my brain, the pathing to go to where. And anyway, so I remember my mate Junior, and he actually messaged me the other day. He went and bought like the $500 or $1,000 pack. So he's got like the golden pack. And he just bought it because, for the lols. And I was like, man, he's just a pay pig when it comes to getting it. Star Citizen was a whole different thing. But anyway, so he messages me and he's like, "I'm going to be ready to rock my skins from 11 years ago in Path of Exile 2. Ha 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 ha." And I was like, "Mate, you've never played Path of Exile in your life." He's like, "Well, I'm going to play now." But I remember when we were like sitting in the final like pit with like Oak. And it's like, you can either choose to help Oak or you can kill Oak. And I'm like, well, I'm going to kill Oak. And he's like, well, I'm going to help him. And then afterwards, it's like, all right, now you guys need to fight each other. And we're like, what? And we're like, all right, so let's throw down. What is this for real? Like, even back then, like the shock value of that being in a game where it's like, we made a decision. Now we have to go gauntlet mode and just last man standing walks out. And like, that's the thing that got me into Path of Exile.
That's awesome.
I still remember my first time taking down Shaper. It was Molten Strike, and it was when Growwood Shank was like a build. This is like a long time ago. Anyone who remembers like Hank the Tank builds, that was when like that mechanic was at its height. And I still remember the feeling of like shaking, like my hands just like, oh my God, I can't believe I've taken, like, I must have tried it God knows how many times. The old setup was just crazy. Like, the influence sort of thing, you had to like do so many maps and branch the influence to. And I still remember the feeling of taking down the Shaper for the first time. And to this day, like, I'll never forget it. I think I got up and I'm like walking around, I'm like, oh, I can't believe I did it. I've done it. And I messaged my mate. I'm like, Yancey, I've done it. And that like it's a different feeling being a new player. You remember those moments. Like, I don't know, when was the first time you took Shaper down? How did you feel?
I felt okay, but I started in 3.8 and into 3.9, so I took down Cirrus first before Shaper.
Okay.
And holy hell, man, was I shaking, sweating. I failed Cirrus like 7 times before I took him down. Toxic Rain, Trickster, I believe.
Yep.
Oh my God, it felt so good. And then Maven, the first time I killed Maven, dude, 4 leagues later, feels so good. I'm wondering, do you think you're going to feel that in Path of Exile 2? I feel like I am.
I feel like I feel like it's like, because it's such a reset back to square one and the bosses are so aberrantly different. I feel like you're going to be sitting there and you're just going to be like, and it's a pinnacle boss, and they're saying like it's the hardest content they've ever put in the game, right? And this is like giving me chills right now talking about this, right? Because it's so cool. Like, but basically you're going to be sitting there and you're going to walk into that room and you'll be like, okay, I've got one shot at this. This is going to be really hard. And like, if you're on stream, everybody's going to be watching you, and they're going to be like, "I hope you die. I hope you die. I hope you die." And you're like, "Be positive, guys. We're going to get through this together." And then basically, it's going to be like, you're either going to do it, and it's going to be clutch, like just a sliver of health left, and you're going to be sitting there going, "Oh my god, I can't believe I got through that at the very end of it."
Yeah.
Or you're just going to get absolutely eviscerated the first time. Probably like 95% of players are going to get eviscerated, and Ben's going to kill every boss first time. But it's going to be that nostalgic feeling of like, yeah, this is a whole new game. I've got to learn it from scratch, but everything is going to feel so, like, because it's so different, right? The hitboxing's different, the boss fights are different. It's just going to be something totally, it's going to be that feeling all over again. And that's, I guess, the most exciting part. Like, because we don't know what these things are going to be like yet, and we don't know how builds are going to interact, what builds are going to be great, what builds are going to be, not so great, what builds are going to cheese it. There's definitely going to be at least one or two broken builds.
Big cheese, man.
Asmongold's probably going to try and figure out ward loop or something like that. Like,
right.
yeah, and then do a video and get 2 million views about ward loop or
100%.
something. But like, that's the craziest thing, is it's like going back in a blast from the past. For me, being like, playing it so long ago, and then it's crazy to think like I don't really play many other games anymore. Like, I play the occasional Diablo, get disappointed, and then just go back to Path of Exile because it's better than everything else.
Mhm.
But like, to be playing a game so consistently for so many years, like decades now, and it's still like being the current game on the market, and then still getting excited about everything in that game is crazy. Like, I don't think I've ever played anything like that. Before that, I played a lot of League of Legends back in the day, and I got to
Bless your
say,
heart.
like, man, I can never go. I got to Gold League, got banned because things got pretty salty in chat, and then after that, I was like, yeah, no, never again. They're never getting my money ever again. But never felt that way about Path of Exile. I think it's always been the chillest game out there, except for when you're in those clutch boss fights where it's like, this is intense.
Yeah.
But,
Now,
yeah.
great question for you, Jorgen. Going into Path of Exile 2, it seems like those chill periods aren't going to be when you're fighting anymore. It seems like those will be when you're traveling to your hideout, when you're in town. Off-meta Michael and I just talked about how he really looks forward to going back and retreating into town, looking at his items and chilling for a bit, and then going ham when you go and fight the monsters. In PoE 2, that moment-to-moment gameplay, I think it'll take a long time to get to a point where you're just like, I'm just going through killing stuff and don't have to pay much attention. Do you think it's going to be a short window where you're at end game, you get some upgrades, you iron out your build, and then it's only bosses that you're really, really intense with? Or do you think it's going to be happening at all times?
Mate, I wish I could say that I'm going to struggle initially with this game. But I feel like the amount of options that allow you to tank everything, they've just like given me the tools, an arsenal, if you want to call it that, to cheese all of their mechanics. Like, Ray's shield is gonna just totally be a ridiculous mechanic. But yeah, I feel like initially in the campaign leveling phase, you're probably gonna feel it. Like, the difference here is skill and veterancy versus, like, whether you're a new player, right? So coming from Path of Exile 1, it's more about learning the new mechanics of the game, but I understand the underlying, like, how things work, right? Mobility is going to be a real advantage, because mobility actually means, like, you can be a better player without making a better build. So if you're mechanically good at the game, right? So if you're like, a StarCraft 2 player, for example, and you're a pro at that, you're probably going to be really good at triggering skills in the right combinations with timing, and we're probably going to see exactly that. There's also, the idea of, the amount of skilling in the game and the amount of options, the ascendancies that are coming into the game, as well as the changes to, like, defense stats and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
I reckon, like, there is going to be the element to some builds may struggle more than others in certain sort of elements of the game. But like, for example, the warrior, right? If you are a slower player, if you're an older player, your hands aren't so good, then the warrior is going to be a really good ascendancy for you because it's not based on timing your skills absolutely perfect. You can be a bit sloppy, and you're going to get forgiven for being a tank. So I think I saw in the reveal footage, like there's one part where a boss just gets absolutely destroyed by the warrior because
Exploded. Yeah.
yeah, and you get 100% block for when you charge into stuff, right? So you're not having to. The biggest issue with Path of Exile 1 is gap clear for melee builds. That's not even a problem in Path of Exile 2, from what I can see. 100% block chance and shield charge is nuts. Like, just means nothing can take you down to get to the enemy. The people who are probably going to get destroyed the most are degenerate lightning arrow players, and tornado shot players. And I don't feel bad about that at all, because I think I went to Exile when I went to ExileCon last year. We were at the front of this place called the Sherlock, right? And we were all like pretty drunk, and I think there was like, we had like exilers getting drunk in the street and everything. And I remember this one guy came up and he goes, "I only play one build every single league, the greatest build ever in the game, Lightning Arrow." I'm like, get out of here. Like, just go away. Like, don't talk to me, mate. He's like, it's the only build in the game. But yeah.
It's gonna be a new game, tons of new stuff introduced. I would love to hear your thoughts too, man. The Ascendancy trials. Finally, they're giving us more options. We're gonna have 3 on launch. 3 on 1.0 at least, 2 on early access launch. Ultimatum 2.0, the Trials of Chaos, and then Sanctum 2.0, Trials of Sakima. What do you think about those? And then I'm really curious, they're gating certain items behind certain types of content again, truly doing that. Not like in Path of Exile 1 where they try to do it and you end up getting rewards from all different types of content and in other content than this specific content, right? So for example, in the Trial of Sakima, you can get those radius jewels on your tree only there. And is that cool? Not cool? What do you think?
So I'm going to blow your mind with that concept. So I'll talk about that, and then I'll talk about the ascendancies after that, right? Because we were talking about this in chat with my stream the other night. Okay. So what do biomes mean to you?
Biomes? So I'm not a Delve player. To me,
okay,
biomes are a bunch of areas that are similar with similar types of monsters. I think that's about it. Yeah.
Right. So
that's what I would define it as in like ARPG.
Yeah. So one of the things that they said were certain maps will spawn in different biomes, right? Not every map will spawn in every biome.
Yes.
If you look at Delve, right? So if you look at fossils, for example, are a great example where this mechanic's used with biomes. So fossils spawn in different biomes. So shuddering fossils are only in cold biomes. Fire fossils are only in molten biomes, right? If they've applied the same concept, only certain uniques will be farmable from certain biomes. Certain items may only be farmable from certain biomes. So basically, the way that I see it is, if you want to target farm something, it gets more than just taking a boss, and maybe it's a boss within a biome, it's a condition. And so you need to fight a boss within this particular type of biome to get a higher probability of drop rate for a very specific item. So that's the way that I read the biome mechanic. I think it's more than just having elemental ailments or whatever in maps and stuff like that. I think it dictates part of the rarity and or drop base, the base drops of items in the game.
Dude, that's totally genius. And there was another leak earlier today from the Atlas passive tree from PoE 2. I think it was just right before I hopped on stream. And it edited the loot that dropped based on biome. So like swamps dropped more currency. And deserts dropped more, oh gosh, I can't remember what it was. I think it was the inscribed ultimatums and stuff like that. I think you're bang on. Yeah, that makes total sense. And that...
Because if you...
Go ahead.
Yeah, well, they're changing the way that rarity works, right? So there's no scarabs in the game. And I didn't like scarabs. I thought scarabs were a solution to deal with a problem that had just gotten out of control in Path of Exile 1. So when you think about it, like they don't have scarabs in Path of Exile 2. They have the tablets, which are basically the old sextants from the original Elder influence maps, and they can overlap. So if you have a look at the towers, the lost towers, there's multiple lost towers within the same vicinity. So you could have maps that overlap, and then so you would build that to basically buff up your map, right? Particularly, you could sort of gear that towards certain maps. But then you would also want to then think about the biome that it sits in order to get a very particular type of drop based on what you're saying there. And then if that's in the Atlas tree, if that is what's in the Atlas tree, then that's how you would basically juice your maps up. So you wouldn't have all the bubblegum currency dropping every 5 seconds, but it would be totally based on how the environment works. And that's the fundamentals of Delve. So in Delve, you would farm specific biomes to get certain outcomes if that was the type of delving that you wanted to do. I think it's a very different approach to an endgame, and I really like it. I think it's,
The
and
Delve
it's good
Lord
for
would say so, of course. Heck yeah. No, I like that though. It's sensible and it's digestible, especially from people who don't have Path of Exile's background. They go in, they're exploring a map, they know, okay, the swamp has item type X. The deserts have this special type of item. Oh, this boss I'm trying to hunt in this specific biome drops this set of uniques. I like that because I know that grinding your games probably will also insert some level of randomness to the loot too. So it's not like it's going to be all completely gated between certain biomes and the like, but there will be that manner of determinism, which does seem to be happening a little bit more in Path of Exile 2. And I know we're skipping over the trials here, but crafting, dude. Crafting is so deterministic, it seems like. Am I out of my mind?
It's so much easier. Like the fewer crafting mats that we've seen so far, number one, which is really good. And it's not like, spam your item until you get all the mods, the right mods. It's like spam your item until you get that one mod that's the right mod. And we know that the mod pool's been refined. I think I saw in some of the updates, so if it's like a spellcaster weapon, you're going to have a better chance of getting a spellcaster. Like they've removed like physical melee damage, for example, from spellcaster weapons. Thank God. Like it was ridiculous. Like crafting was like the biggest hurdle for newer players. Like I think the amount of queries I've had over the years from how do I craft this weapon, and I'm like, I don't even craft this weapon. That's a Locahole question. That's not a Jorgen question. But I just farm currency and then buy it. But that's the big plus. The other thing is like the biggest concern with Path of Exile has always been the amount of stuff dropping on the ground, and they've sort of eliminated that as well. So it's refined. You're going to get more currency drops, but not more different types of currency. And that's going to sort of push you in the right direction to get the items that you want quicker. The other thing is it makes the game less reliant on a market, and things that will go up on the market will be like, either you want to be really lazy or they're very specific to very specific builds. So they come at a cost because of those reasons. I think that's a good approach. One of the things like most players will do now is it addresses another problem, which is RMTing. So basically it takes away that need for people to go and get tons of currency via inappropriate means and then walk into the game and just buy their builds or buy all the guilds the gear straight away. That like basic gear to get your build working, you can essentially make that gear yourself now, and you can feel like you own that build more. It's the biggest issue with building 8 or 10 builds in a league, right? Is after the first build, you sort of get lazy, and then when you buy items for a build, it just doesn't feel the same as when you've had to craft the items for the build. It's that ownership feeling that you've worked for it, and that's why I like the new crafting system. I think like the salvage system is really good because now we can like salvage stuff away. So I'm fine with salvage benches and stuff like that. I will admit I will probably miss the bench crafting, but I do like rune sockets, and I feel like rune words might actually make their way into the game, but they will likely be unique items if they were going to go that path.
Ooh, but I like that.
Yeah, like you would have like a specific type, like like some gems, the old threshold gems, for example, using that as an example. You'd have like specific runes. If they're in a certain sequence, then they build a word, and then that word gives you an extra buff or something like that. That's unique. Or it could turn your item into a specific unique, which is something that they played around with Settlers of Kalgur with that axe, I think, or hammer that they released. There's just a lot of there's a lot of nuances of how you would go about master crafting, but I feel like it's more approachable for the newer player overall. And then you've got your target farmable content like Legion and stuff like the new Legion rings, like 50% increased quality.
The breach rings?
The breach rings. So, no, that's crazy. Like that's absolutely nuts. Like, everybody said to me, "Oh, I'm going to be using those rings," and I'm like, "But it's probably going to be really hard to get the fertile catalyst to be able to do that." But you know,
Yeah, they were showing
that,
some busted rings there, most definitely. And I think
oh,
one of the big changes too that maybe some people are overlooking is the fact that they upped the currency drop rate so massively. So now it doesn't feel bad to use stuff when you're playing. And for new
yep,
players too, the moment of making fun of a new player for using, an exalted orb or a divine orb, that's going to be gone now, right? Because I've had it happen with some of my friends and people in the chat, like, oh, I just got an exalted orb, I used it back when exalted orbs were good, or divine orbs, right? That's going to be gone, but it's going to be so much better because now you can actually use the stuff that you're
mm.
dropping. I never used divine orbs. I almost
I
never used exalted orbs.
I,
Now
I use I use them often,
you do.
but yeah, but you've got to be like a degenerate living in the depths of dells, making like 400 chaos every 10 minutes. But
Oh,
like
not me. Nope.
that's been the issue with the game. Like you see your players like, how do I make currency? That's why I did a lot of the currency guides to be able to guide new players into how to do that. And that was the biggest challenge with Path of Exile 1. But now, like, yeah, you can just exalt slam away. I think we were giving crap to a guy in the global Path of Exile Discord years ago because he was sitting there like chaos spamming his boots to get tailwind, and then he hits like the perfect roll after like 500 chaos, and he's like, yeah, and we're like, you should feel good about that. Like, what are you doing? And but yeah, like getting rid of that difficulty is great. And I think the other thing too is like I heard a thing where people will like make exalts great again. And like I miss the old exalts were like worth more, but I feel like chaos orbs are probably going to be worth a lot more currency moving
Do you
forwards.
think they're going to be the new divines? I saw a take that maybe annuls will.
Possibly, yeah. I think that we may find like 3 or 4 of those currencies will actually be like the major currencies moving forwards. But we won't know until we know more about the drop rates, I guess, at this stage. So how
Right.
often are they going to drop? Divines still sort of feel like they would be pretty powerful though, like re-rolling. But is it going to be all the modifiers or one of the? I can't remember what the
The
currency sheet
change.
says about that. Yeah,
Yeah,
because if it's
I'm not sure.
because I feel like if it's one of the modifiers, that would definitely make them probably they would need to have a higher drop rate. But
Mm.
like, yeah, I don't know. It's a mystery area right now. I'm sure there'll be master crafters that'll be like going nuts.
Oh
But
yeah.
you
I
know,
like the
things like
new lottery they added with Val Orbs too. That one opportunity that Mark identified where there's this chance to multiply all the modifiers by 1.2 or zero point 0.8 and it can go over the cap with Val Orbs. That's
yep.
going to create a whole new class of like top tier gear for those top tier crafters and players, but it's going to be so rare because you have to hit the perfect lottery and then you're trading off, you don't get that extra socket from the Val Orb and what ends up being more valuable. Oh, so fascinating.
Well, it's the thing that's going to make Ultimatum one of the go-to mechanics, right? So Ultimatum drops like crazy, like double corrupted items and things like that. So, if because what they said with the trials, you're going to be able to push past the standard trial, beyond ascending. So, you're going to have people who are going to like I'm probably going to do Ultimatum because Ultimatum just looks like fun and it's easier than Sanctum. But but yeah, you probably gotta. Yeah, I was never like I like Sanctum's cool, and I will admit when I saw that and my chat saw that and we're like, oh no, not Sanctum. Like, I'm a tank player. I take damage. I can't do Sanctum. Like, it's like throwing a bloody elephant into a China store. Like, you can't send me into that sort of situation. Um, I'm clumsy as hell. But so like they say, the honor system, takes into account your armor. So, if you've got a ton of armor, then you're going to be able to do it fine. And that was like the reassuring thing. But
Mhm.
Ultimatum definitely is one of the mechanics that's got me interested because of that exact issue or that exact topic. But also, how do we double corrupt? So we've got Val Orbs. Do they have a chance of double corrupting, or
Mm. Maybe
two
it's at the top
modifiers?
of that tower.
Yep.
Could be that.
Or
Maybe the double corruption altar is after you fight the trial master. That'd be kind of cool and
well,
thematic.
you think about those reliquary maps, right? So just going back
Mhm.
to Path of Exile 1, and you know how, so I think I covered this on the video I did yesterday, how they've got the unlinked nodes on the Atlas map, right? And the reliquary node, right? So I've got a theory that when you unlock the links to that, which I would say would be by traveling around the node to then show the path, right, which is how it'd work in Delve.
Oh.
But if you have a think about that unique map from Path of Exile 1, because that was a unique map in PoE 1, so that would drop a corrupted item from the end of that run, right? So what I would probably say is and also if you think about it, your double corruption chambers are in temples, right? And we know that, we're not going to get temples in the game. So potentially that is the old temple system, and that is how you double corrupt items potentially. So,
Ooh, I love
and that's
it.
why they haven't shown anything about it, because you're going to have to figure it out yourself. But like when you think about it, that was a pretty that was a pretty standard meta crafting thing. You'd have scenarios where you'd like try and double corrupt to get the best roll, and then you'd either hit it, you wouldn't hit it, or you'd destroy your item. You can do that with Val orbs, but here's like a super Val crafting scenario, like a corruption chamber. It has a corruption chamber in it. So just sort of thinking about it, that would make sense, and it would make sense that they haven't told us about that, because that would be something you would need to discover.
Right.
But
And there's probably all those hidden dots across the Atlas, mechanics from Path of Exile 1 or new mechanics that they thought up that they've just dropped there as points of interest that we're going to discover.
Yep.
That would be so cool to just find out, man. And okay, so we did just have the huge knowledge drop, but there's so much we still don't know, obviously. I asked off meta Michael this. I want to ask you as well. I'm going to wonder if it's going to be the same answer. What feature are you most looking forward to that hasn't been fully explored yet?
It's a hard question, because I like all the mechanics, but I want to know what's behind the Trial Master door. So are we going to fight the Trial Master? I want to fight the Trial Master.
They're memeing on it, man. They're really memeing it.
Mate, that door is like, why would you put it in the trailer and not tell us what's behind the door? I need to know what's behind the door. Also, I like the Trial Master because, it's satisfying once he's been like clapping on you for a little while and calling you all the names under the sun that you beat his ass. But I feel like that's one of the big mechanics that I need to know. The other one is just like, you've got those unlinked points in the map like we were just talking about. And I reckon there's a lot more of those points than what they've alluded to. I reckon there's like tons of different like variations or whatever. It just makes sense that they would put like old legacy mechanics that, they didn't deem to be a whole league. Like you look at like Essence, for example, or the, was it the Artificers Towers or whatever? Precursors Towers?
Precursors Towers, yeah. Precursor relics, whatever they're called.
Yeah.
Shrines,
yes.
precursor shrines. I don't know. Heck, man.
They're shrines, right? So they're just renaming it. So they took old mechanics that were in the game, and they just baked it into the standard game itself. So I'd say there'd be like a bunch of other smaller mechanics that we'll see. Like, we don't know if Bestiary is probably going to be its own league mechanic. Just trying to think on what they could add, like
fishing. That's a core Path of Exile mechanic. It's probably in PoE too.
They tried to add it in originally, so maybe they'll be successful with it this time. The other thing that we haven't seen either, and I don't know if this is something they might do, and this is probably speculative, is there ever going to be the option for PvP? Like they failed with PvP originally, or they tried originally and it didn't take off. But is it maybe something that they might add down the track, or is it something they haven't told us about that you could just PvP people? Like, can you just right click and go challenge like you can in Path of Exile 1, and it takes you to a secret Atsiri, like a Val Arena or something like that? And if Hog's still in the chat, I don't know if he's still in there, I will happily PvP Hog any day and beat him.
Yeah, dude, with the methodical combat, I think it might actually be fun, especially early on when you're not at that godlike power level yet, moving a little bit quicker. I think that would be pretty cool. Way better than Path of Exile 1, where everything is kind of clunky early.
Yeah. We did try it a few times over the years, and when Max Block Reckoning was a thing, I think I had someone try and clap me when Max Block Reckoning Gladiator was a thing, that was a disastrous outcome for them. It's just like one hit with Max Block Reckoning. But anyway, there's a lot of things like that they've given us like a taste. I feel like the journey to learn about everything that's in the game is going to be a totally different experience. So we're all excited about like. Potentially, the way they look at it is they've shown us like maybe 5% of what is actually in the game so far. Like, they've given us pinnacles, right? We don't know what the drops are going to be from pinnacles yet.
Right.
We
just have
for
the bird's eye
example,
view right now, literally,
yeah,
of like the
yeah.
Atlas, you know?
Here's the summary. Here's the summary. We
Mhm.
it was at the first page, the executive summary. We haven't even gotten into the financial report yet, right? So we haven't seen the nuts and bolts or the notes. So sorry, accountant. I'm just linking this up for any of the other bean counters in the channel. I guess that's the most fun part about it all is we just don't know what's in the game. Like, are we going to have Original Sin come back because we've got
It's
Sanctum?
it's called it's called Temporalis. That's
Oh,
the
really?
reward, the reward for doing the no-hit run. They showed the
Yep.
relic and they showed the unique item rewarded. It's called Temporalis, and they showed the name of the boss that you have to kill on the final floor. No idea what it is though. It's not in PoE 1 right now, but it's
It could be the
there.
case. It could be the case, like with the King of the Mist. Sorry, I keep forgetting the names of the bosses.
It's fine.
The jewel that drops on that, for example,
Yeah.
potentially that could be back in the game, or they could call it something else. Like, well, they did call it something else originally. That was that which was taken, ended up becoming what it is now. And this will be part of the reinvention of uniques. So yeah, who knows? Like, it's anyone's guess at this stage. And the other thing is, like, we don't know really what T0 or T1 uniques are in the game yet.
No.
Has Mage Blood survived? Like, trinkets are an interesting concept, and trinkets would work with a Mage Blood. So,
Yeah.
potentially there's a unique flask that you could switch out your main flask with. And I think they alluded to that, where you could get a flask that would mean you didn't need a mana flask anymore, for example.
Yeah.
And that would mean maybe you could apply a fourth trinket instead of having the fourth flask. Or
I think
second
I saw
flask,
some
sorry.
footage with like a shield flask from the
Hmm.
recent LA event too, so those might still exist. I may have completely misseen because I was just scoping through stuff earlier, but I think there's more to the system than they could explain on the live stream. I think it's a very recent change, and there's probably a lot of flux going on, but they've got 2 weeks. We're gonna find out pretty darn soon, right?
Well, they had a lot of nodes. Like, if they bring the Pathfinder in, right, that means that they're probably going to do flask effect and trinket effect. And on that, but like, we haven't seen all the nodes for the Pathfinder, so I'd say the Pathfinder, and I saw what was being said about like the flask, right? So I've done a flask build, right, and many leagues ago. Poisonous
Poisonous
concoction.
concoction, explosive
Yep.
concoction.
Yeah. So you only need one life flask to make that work. It's not like so it'll work fine, and as that scales up, that'll probably look really good. But the big thing there is like flask effectiveness and trinket effectiveness. I reckon that Ascendancy probably will abuse trinkets. So it would make sense that it would have some form of trinket adjustment or something like that. Or
Yeah.
potentially there's another Ascendancy to be released that will be totally focused around manipulating trinkets, for example. So
Yeah.
those are just some of the things that come to mind.
Now,
is in part, yeah.
no, definitely. So, Jorgen, you said you've played other ARPGs besides PoE, right? But you always come back
Yeah.
to PoE, and now PoE 2, of course. In your travels and in what we've seen so far in PoE 2, are there any like mechanics, themes, or elements that you think are just missing from the genre, like just missed opportunities that you've seen from either other games or just something that you think hasn't been fully explored in an ARPG, and maybe not in Path of Exile too? That could just be an easy slam dunk win. What's going on? Like, you can look to, I think, PoE 2 and their heavy focus on boss fights in an ARPG. I think with the build diversity and the item systems mixed with that, kind of stealing it from like Elden Ring and Souls-likes, that's a slam dunk. Can you think of any other slam dunks that we could pitch to GGG?
I'm trying to. So I think of like Inquisitor Martyr. I got into that for a little while, but I can't see many mechanics in Inquisitor Martyr that would make this game better. Like last Epoch, basically the end game is delve/echo system. Pretty much dodge rolls are in it. Can't think of anything that would make it better on that basis. It's really like, I don't know what else you could, to be honest with you, I don't know what else you could add to it off the top. Like, if I think of myself as like an average everyday Joe Blow gamer, which is what I am, like work a day, sort of, come home late night, half asleep, sit at my computer, can't sort of concentrate anymore, need a game to forget about the day. it sort of ticks all the boxes in that respect. I can't really fault what they've done at all at any element of it. The only thing that I'm a bit concerned about would be when you get off at the very start, when you first go to your to your map system. They said that you can't, if you fail a waystone or a map, you can't proceed to do that map or waystone again. Now, the concern that I've got with that, and I don't know what their response is, and probably, a question you might already have when you talk to Jonathan Rogers, is what happens if you fail all 4 of those points?
There's
So
got
when
to
you
be
first,
something, man. Somebody's got to have done that in testing. I feel like it's too obvious.
it is, but it could just be the case of, well, okay, well, they haven't yet communicated that, and you just got to like do it to figure it out. Maybe like we do it to figure it out. Like, can you imagine like you get off the plate and then just like brick your entire end game because maybe it like resets all 4.
You know, it
Um,
might be a feel bad moment too. I'm wondering if it'll really piss people off, like, because it's 4 branching paths out from the ziggurat, right? And you see a
mm,
little bit of each path. Imagine if you see something like just beyond on one path and you're like, oh, I'm going to try that. I'm going to do it. I'm going to get to that area. And then you brick the map. Oh my gosh. I wonder what that's going to look like, man. Like, imagine you're getting to the pinnacle boss that we don't know about, the uber pinnacle, the hardest content in the game, and you fail the waystone connecting to it. Oh,
yep,
oh, it's
it'll
going to
just be
changes the game, Jorgen. Oh my gosh.
it'll just cut so much more differently,
It will.
because and like you've got no other, like say it's on a sea line, you've got no other path to it. It's just that one point and that one point before it, and if you screw up that point, basically you've screwed up in totality. um it'll be interesting to see if they have like something in the game where you could restore the points potentially.
Mm.
And
Yeah,
maybe
yeah, an item,
that's
a currency item to use on the maps. Dude, I bet that's in the game. I think you just spoiled something that they're gonna tease.
I, I would say that's the go. And maybe there's also a way that you could reforge the paths as well. Maybe that's maybe an expansion later down the track or a league
Ooh,
down the
ooh.
track. But yeah, as additional mechanics, I think it pretty much hits the mark. So you think about like minions is a great example, right? So
Mm.
we all hate having to self-cast minions, right? We don't have to do that anymore. It just binds to spirit, and you can auto-cast that. Heavily tanky characters, you have max block, so yeah, you can do that again. Um, yeah, like we don't know what the rest of the ascendancies are, so
No.
we get every, and there's an ascendancy for everybody. Like there's a gameplay style for absolutely everybody. We've got guns in the game, funnily enough. Um, like what more could, like it's just like it's like the Yuri Boyka of ARPGs. It's like the most complete ARPG ever released.
I mean, dude, I think we're
Created. Like,
both on the same page with that. It's one of the most complete ARPGs on release ever, and it's in
yeah,
early access. And it literally starts, dude, in like 13. I have it on the screen. 12 days, 15 hours, 30 minutes, 14 seconds, man.
mate,
It we are an hour in, and I am zonked. Jorgen, dude, it was amazing speaking to you. Could you shout yourself out to everybody in the chat and the VOD? Where can we find you? Twitch, YouTube, Twitter, whatever.
Yeah, no, I've got the YouTube channel. I've been a fixture for like a half a decade there. If you want to come see me and chat, ask about builds, ask about. I'm basically like old furniture in Path of Exile these days. So we've got the Twitch as well. Obviously, when you see the Viking helmets come up, maybe for the next few streams, I'll wear the Viking helmet and we'll get a nicer Viking helmet for the streams. And maybe hint hint, I'll get like a big cloak and something like that. We'll sit here with a big like fake bear skin or something like that. It'd be pretty cool. Outside of that, the X is obviously there, so feel free to drop in there. You can see me harass Blizzard on X all day long for their bad shit posts. And that's about it. Like, yeah, no, but no. Thanks for having me on the podcast or on the stream. I appreciate it. And yeah, no, it should be a fantastic day. And yeah.
Yeah, Jorgen, man, it's going to be so much fun. We're going to have to chat more. Everybody in the chat, everybody on the VOD, go subscribe to Jorgen right now. And if you're not subscribed to me, what the heck are you doing watching a 3-hour podcast with Hoffman and Michael and Jorgen? Sub now, like the video. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you in the next one, my fellow exiles. Tala Kura. Dude, that
That'd
was
be
really
one of-
fun. Hell yeah.
I know, man.